It all kicks off on a battlefield blanketed in snow and fallen soldiers, where a lone warrior is the last one standing. Just then, an older man approaches from behind and calls him by the name Ash. He questions what the young man is doing there, since he had entrusted him with the mission to conquer the East. The boy remains dead silent, seeming to hesitate at the question. Breaking the silence, Ash replies bluntly that he only came back to take him out. Turning around with his sword in hand, he accuses the old man of using his unit as bait from the very beginning, just to get rid of them. With his face twisted by fury and disappointment, the young man calls him father. Without a hint of remorse, the patriarch confirms that was the only use for a wingless good, for nothing like his foolish son. Our main character is Ashe Elmheim, someone carrying a heavy burden. He belongs to the House of Elmheim, a family with a massive military reputation. Roderick is the leader of this lineage that protects the royal family, being the only one in the country to possess the legendary 7 wings. In the past, on a whim, this man rescued Ash when he was on the brink of his demise in a blizzard. Because of that, the young man grew up fighting bloody battles relentlessly. His goal was always to do whatever it took to repay the debt for having his life saved. But because he lacked the wing crest, he was constantly put down by his brothers and felt like he could never repay his father. The family's magical power is measured by the number of wings, and Roderick always called him useless for having none. Even so, the young man trained desperately with his sword, believing that one day all his devotion would be rewarded. At that moment, memories of the past mix with the recent betrayal on the battlefield. He finally understands the harsh reality of his situation. He remembers the exact moment his troop was ambushed in the snow and left for dead. Back in the present, Ash questions if this betrayal is his father's answer after so many years of blind loyalty. Coldly, Roderick says that a mere tool shouldn't have expectations and tells the nuisance to get lost. A single tear streams down the young man's bloodied face, showing the weight of this rejection. With nothing left to lose, he lunges violently with his sword at his own father. As he attacks, he laments how idiotic he was for believing in him all this time. The blades clash with force, kicking up snow everywhere. However, the old warrior just keeps a mocking expression in the face of the attack. Taking advantage of the distraction, Ash's brothers appear from behind and bind him with magical chains. Unable to defend himself from their cowardly move, he is completely immobilized and struck by both of them. The impact of the attack makes our hero spit up blood as he suffers from the extreme pain. Laughing, one of the brothers says that a wingless good, for nothing, would never know his place. They gather around the fallen boy, saying that groveling on the ground suits him best. Agonizing in the snow, Ash asks why he was saved in the past if the intention was always to discard him in the end. But Roderick tells him to stop kidding himself, assuring him that he never needed him for anything at all. With brutal force, the patriarch grabs his injured son's hair and yanks his head up. Holding him in the air, he reveals that the only thing that ever mattered was the power of the 7 wings hidden in the boy's body. Shocked by this revelation, the young man repeats the words, not understanding how he could possess such power. The old man continues his cruel explanation, praising how truly useful Ash's mother was. He throws the boy to the ground like trash, saying she served only to give birth to a seed for his own benefit. Desperate for answers, the MC tries to reach for him, demanding to know what the heck he's talking about. With his last bit of strength, he screams Roderick's name, demanding an explanation as life drains from his body. Slowly, his hand falls into the snow, and he begins to feel an intense cold taking over everything. Closing his eyes, he wonders if this is where it all ends, and what the true meaning of his miserable life was. The white, silent landscape dominates his vision as the darkness of his final moments seems to swallow his consciousness. However, he suddenly wakes up feeling a slight warmth and realizes he's wrapped in blankets in the middle of the snow. Trying to move, he finds he's bundled up in thick, strange clothes. Looking around, he notices everything seems far too real to be some post-mortem illusion. The icy wind howls as he wonders where in the world he ended up. Lifting his own arm, he's confused to see how tiny his body is. In shock, he realizes this isn't just a dream. He's actually been reborn as a newborn baby. Turning his head, he finds a woman collapsed in the snow beside him and wonders if she's gone. Suddenly, the glare of torches cuts through the darkness, accompanied by shouts from a search party. Armed knights are scouring the area, ordering their men to find the runaway woman at any cost. The guards state they need to recover the stolen child for Lord Roderick's sake. Hearing that familiar name, our hero's eyes widen in pure astonishment. He tries to process the information, remembering the image of his father, and trying to make sense of the situation. Little by little, he he concludes that those men are actively hunting the deceased woman's baby. Piecing together that he was also rescued on a snowy night, he considers the crazy possibility that he's gone back in time. With no time to hesitate, his tiny body begins to crawl awkwardly through the snow. With determination, he decides he'll confirm these wild theories once he's safe. Looking at the fallen woman, he knows that if he stays there, he'll fall right back into the ducal house's hands. Using all the strength in his tiny arms, he pulls himself forward against the storm. Desperation takes over his mind, focused only on getting away from there as fast and as far as possible. One of his hands sinks into the soft snow, making it harder to move through the hostile terrain. Completely exhausted, he rests his face on the cold ground, complaining about his own heavy breathing. His limbs start to heat up bizarrely, feeling like they're on fire. Even as he miserably drags himself, leaving a trail in the snow, he swears he will survive. The heat radiates from his tiny body as his determination becomes unshackable in the face of his demise. The memory of the moment he was taken out by his own father fuels his escape. With his eyes glowing with rage, he promises that one day he will take Roderick's life. Soon from above, the long trail of his struggle for survival cuts through the vast white expanse of the forest. However, exhaustion wins, and he ends up passing out right at the feet of two mysterious people. With the blizzard letting up, a little girl calls out to her father after finding something on the ground. The noble-looking man is surprised by the scene, revealing himself to be from the Viscounty of Highfried. Holding the newborn baby in his arms, he wonders how a child ended up in a place like this. The nobleman holds the little one in his arms, observing the newly rescued child with great care. Shocked, he questions how such a young baby ended up in this freezing environment. Looking at the long trail marked in the snow, the man tries to figure out if the boy traveled that whole distance by himself. With the newborn emitting a faint magical glow, he wonders who on earth this mysterious child is. Meanwhile, our hero's consciousness awakens in a dark, confusing space, trying to figure out where he is. Surrounded by glowing feathers gently falling around him, he realizes something unusual has come to him. Just then, the little one rubs his eyes with his tiny hands and finally wakes up in the real world. Four children are peering closely at the newborn, super excited as they tell their older sister he just opened his eyes. Being squeezed and pulled from all sides by the little ones, the boy is completely confused by the bizarre situation. Soon, a young woman steps in and tries to shoo the younger ones away to protect the baby from all the commotion. Annoyed with all the fuss, the MC lets out a grunt and decides to crawl far away from them. Using his small arms, he moves across the floor, completely focused on escaping. Startled by the sudden scene, one of the girls tries to get the little runaway's attention. The chase begins down the halls, with the baby crawling at high speed while the children tell him to stop. In this moment of stress, an intense glow envelops our hero's tiny body. The boy's eyes shine as he suddenly feels an absurd amount of energy coursing through his body. Like a rocket, he is launched into the air, leaving a luminous trail, and realizes with wonder that this is pure magical power. However, the clumsy flight sends the baby spinning through the sky without any direction or control. Unable to master the magic, the newborn begins to plummet at high speed outside the mansion. Desperation fills his mind as the imminent collision seems unavoidable. Luckily, the Viscount catches him mid-air and comments, impressed, that the child is truly strange for falling from the sky. Looking closely at the face of the man who just saved him, the boy finally recognizes him. He realizes that this is Viscount Highfried, the older brother of the cruel Duke Roderick. Shocked by the discovery, the MC concludes he ended up in the other branch of the Elmheim house. This man leads the Viscount family, a highly respected part of the lineage. In the past, Highfried and Roderick were the two great pillars protecting the royalty, but the boy remembers this noble perished in a civil war. The tragedy also resulted in the fall of the entire Viscount's family during that same dark period. Looking at his own tiny hand, the boy is absolutely certain that he really has gone back in time. Frustrated, he laments having fled the main house only to end up being taken in by his greatest enemy's brother. Inside the mansion, the Viscount's wife holds the baby and remarks with wonder how his magic went out of control, proving he's no ordinary child. The woman shows immense affection as she caresses the newborn in her lap. She comforts the little one, assuring him that the scare is over and he is now completely safe with them. The MC blinks in surprise at such kindness, something he had never received in his past life. Beside them, the patriarch leans in to observe the child with even more attention and interest. The Viscount extends his hand and states with conviction that the boy possesses unimaginable power. Pulling back the baby's clothes, he reveals that the mark engraved on his skin is the definitive proof of this raw strength. The couple is amazed when they see in the mirror that the red symbol represents the legendary 7 wings. In complete shock, the boy himself mentally questions how the heck that mark got on his body. Little by little, the pieces start to fall into place in our hero's troubled mind. He recalls Roderick's cruel old words about needing that hidden power, finally understanding the truth. The memory of the final humiliation at the old man's hands comes rushing back, full and painful. It becomes clear that the Duke only rescued him in that blizzard to steal his magic in the future. Furious, the boy realizes the hypocrisy of being called useless his whole life, when his own father had torn his wings away. Back in the present, the wife looks apprehensively at her husband, awaiting a final decision. The man maintains a rigid posture, reflecting on what fate they should give to such a powerful child. Knowing the danger, the little one decides he can't let this power fall into the hands of the main house under any circumstances. Clenching his fists tightly, he swears to use these newly discovered 7 wings to secure his revenge against Roderick. Surprising everyone, the kind Viscount announces he will take in and adopt the boy as his own son. The boy looks up, completely dumbfounded by the nobleman's sudden generosity. With a gentle movement, the man brings his hand to the child's head with enormous affection. He caresses Ash's hair, commenting that the baby is still just a fledgling, unable to fly on his own in the world. The patriarch promises to take responsibility for raising him until the day the boy decides to take flight on his own. Our hero's eyes overflow with emotion at such comforting and sincere words. Suddenly, the bedroom door bursts open as the other children slide into the room. The mother turns to the little intruders and asks if they were eavesdropping on the whole conversation. In unison, the siblings sheepishly confess they were just worried about the newborn's well-being. Very agitated, the children get the woman's attention as they curiously point at the baby. Excited, the whole family gathers around, wanting to know what the new little brother's definitive name will be. The wife looks reflectively at the window, thinking with great affection about the perfect choice. Lifting the baby against the moonlight, the Viscount baptizes him Astor, marking the birth of a new star in the Hyfryd family. A decade passes quickly, revealing a peaceful and prosperous routine on the grand estate of the Viscounty. At the castle entrance, the servants bow respectfully and welcome the return of Lord Hyfryd. Firm footsteps suddenly echo through the luxurious halls of the mansion, indicating the approach of someone important. Young Astor appears, walking with great confidence and elegance, dressed in his impeccable noble attire. Upon meeting his older sister on the stairs, he gently extends his hand and tells her to be careful on the steps. Delighted by his gesture, Alphen accepts his help, highlighting the strong connection and companionship between the two siblings. They continue walking side by side through the courtyard in a very pleasant and relaxed atmosphere. Outside, a carriage awaits to take them to the famous annual assembly of the nobility. The gathering brings together the martial houses to strengthen political ties and serves as a stage for the young to show off their combat skills. Arriving at the grand event hall, the invited nobles are already starting to mingle. The Hyfryd family crosses through the main doors together, immediately drawing the attention of everyone around them. Vicious whispers fill the air as the nobles gossip, mocking the Viscount's decision to adopt some nobody. The gossips whisper with contempt, questioning how long that family will continue to tarnish the lineage's reputation with their choices. Hearing the quiet insults behind his back, Astor observes the crowd and concludes that this is where the true dregs of society gather. Sensing the tense atmosphere, his sister worriedly asks him not to let those idiotic offenses get to him. Clenching his fist tightly, the MC knows that showing any kind of weakness in this place is asking to be crushed. He stands firm beside his sister, prepared to deal with the pressure and the dirty looks from the nobility. Observing the situation, the Viscount comments bluntly that this is their family's true position right now. The nobleman points to the enormous castle ahead and confesses he made a point of bringing the boy here to witness this reality. Staring at the imposing structure, Astor hears his father ask if this hostile reception has left him disappointed. Without hesitation, the young man assures him it hasn't and states that this chilly atmosphere is exactly what suits him. Pleased with his son's confident response, Hyfryd laughs and says that's reassuring to hear. Just then, the young man recalls that in his past life, he had the worst possible debut in this same bloody tournament. However, he reflects that things have changed completely now that he has regained the raw power of the 7 wings. Confidence fills his mind, completely focused on rewriting his own story. Together, the three of them continue walking through the courtyard towards the main event that awaits them. Meanwhile, two young men watch the family's arrival with great interest through the castle windows. Determined, the MC maintains an unshakable posture in the face of the challenge to come. Setting the stage, the patriarch takes the lead and invites everyone to head inside. The boy silently agrees, deciding he's going to make a simply dazzling high society debut. Inside the gigantic arena, the atmosphere is electric, with the tournament marking the era when knights ruled the world. To survive in this ruthless environment, any warrior needed to perfectly master both raw power and grace. The clash between competitors shows that true strength has always boiled down to pure skill with a blade. Magical blows explode across the courtyard, proving that combat dexterity was the only path to fame. The crowd roars with the fast-paced confrontations as fighters exchange intense attacks all around. Slicing through the air with precise movements, energy envelops the knights in a truly lethal dance. But in the end, there was only one thing that could prove someone possessed both of these absolute qualities. Magic overflows from their bodies in the heat of battle, revealing the true differentiator of elite warriors. The ultimate symbol of all this unquestionable supremacy has always been the legendary wing crest. An intense light shines on a combatant's hand, proudly displaying the mark that defines the strongest in the kingdom. Watching all this from the balcony, Asura is impressed and comments on how absurdly violent this place is. The girl agrees and says that it was precisely because of all this brutality that their other sisters refused to come. The MC remains completely silent, absorbing the heavy atmosphere of the environment around him. In the main courtyard, a competitor falls to the ground, defeated by his opponent's absolute superiority. Noticing her brother's quietness, Alphen turns curiously and calls his name to check if everything is all right. The girl asks if Asura is nervous, remembering this is his first sword dance festival. Being completely honest, the young man assures her he isn't worried at all and confesses that he even feels a certain nostalgia. Hearing this unusual response, Alphen is confused about why he would feel that way. Just then, Hyfrade says he's stepping away for a meeting and asks her to take good care of her younger brother. All excited, the young woman assures her father that she's much more capable than the rookie, since her other sister is too clumsy. Before leaving, the Viscount warns the boy that there are many young people his age around, advising him to make some contacts. But the tone turns serious when the patriarch tells him not to let anyone discover the secret about the 7 wings. The man walks away down the hall as the MC reflects on the order he just received. However, a quick glance around is all it takes to notice the shadowy figures of the other nobles staring at them with pure hatred. Faced with such blatant hostility, the boy scratches his head, wondering how on earth he's supposed to make friends here. Suddenly, his gaze catches something specific in the middle of the unpleasant crowd. Without saying a word, he starts walking down the stairs alone, leaving his sister confused and asking where he's going. With the utmost naturalness, Asura replies over his shoulder that he's going to make new friends. He walks straight to the center of the courtyard, where a group of young nobles is lounging around. Noticing his approach, a red-haired young man mockingly asks who the heck the intruder is. Ignoring the hostility, the boy introduces himself politely, calling the young man brother-in-law Darius. He makes a point of using the full name of the main lineage, stating he is his little brother. Maintaining a cynical posture, Asura comments that he saw him from afar and decided to come say hi. Sprawled on the ground, the other noble tells his brother that this is just the adopted kid the Viscount's family picked up. Understanding the situation, Darius bursts out laughing, mocking the rookie's courage for using the family initial. Staring at the two of them, the MC remembers that these are the legitimate heirs who took him out in his past life. Back then, the mere presence of this duo was enough to leave him completely terrified. However, analyzing the scene now, he realizes they're just a bunch of brats trying to act like adults. Just then, Alphen's tense voice breaks her brother's concentration. The girl grabs his arm, trying to pull him back, arguing that the greeting is over. Noticing her presence, the hare shifts his focus and mockingly asks if the young lady came too. He provokes her mercilessly, questioning if she won't need to hide behind her father today. Demanding obedience, Darius orders her to come over and entertain them, claiming it's a direct order from the main house. Furious at his audacity, Alphen immediately refuses, reminding him there is no master-servant relationship between their families. Noticing his sister is losing her patience and stepping forward, Asura tries to call her back to avoid a bigger problem. Annoyed by her response, the hare grips his cup and says he still has more to say. The MC remains perfectly calm, just listening to see where this provocation is going. With a sadistic smile, Darius asks in a mocking tone if they know an interesting little detail. He starts insulting the Viscount, saying her father was a knight who couldn't even protect the king. Without holding back, the young man recalls that his own younger brother had to cut off the noble's arm because of it. The girl freezes at the insult, while the hare gives thanks for not having that loser's blood in his veins. Consumed by rage, Alphen screams at the coward to take back everything he just said about her family. In response, Darius throws his drink right in her face, stating he won't tolerate disrespect against his own father. The wine drips down the young woman's hair as he humiliates her, saying the Viscount only had useless daughters. Holding the empty cup, the sadist bets her father must be so disappointed, warning her this isn't some playground. The young woman clutches her stained dress, as she's told she should have come dressed in rags so she wouldn't mind the mess. Watching the scene from a distance, Aster confesses in his thoughts that he was quite worried on the way to the festival. He approaches one of the hall's servants, thinking that maybe, upon seeing their faces again, he wouldn't feel angry anymore. In a swift movement, the boy snatches the wine bottle from the servant's hands, realizing his fury is still very much intact. Taking charge of the situation, the MC stands beside his sister and declares aloud that, in the end, he's happy. To kick off the reckoning, the MC calls the hare by name and throws the wine bottle at him. Sitting comfortably, Darius catches the object mid-air with ease, maintaining a very arrogant posture. Pointing the bottle back at him, the young man taunts that the rookie is still the same piece of junk as always. In a swift move, Aster smashes the bottle hard over the sadist's head, drenching him in the drink. Seizing the opening, the boy draws his sword and points it at the enemy's neck while his sister screams in fear. Confused by the sudden assault, the noble touches his own bloodied face, thinking it's just grape juice. Staring down at him, the MC warns in a threatening tone that it suits a spoiled brat like him perfectly. Just then, memories from 3 years ago flood his mind, showing an absurd explosion of golden energy. Back then, Alphen was hugging one of her sisters who had fallen to the ground, asking if he wanted to get them all taken out. Chaos ruled the Viscount's mansion, with the children terrified by the uncontrollable fury of that magic. It was the raw power of the 7 wings overflowing without restraint, revealing a danger no one there could have imagined. Desperate, Hyfrid drew his sword, trying to contain the boy's power and wondering if it could even be controlled. With his body glowing, the boy heard his father promise that they would find a way to master the situation together. Back in the present, a guard bursts into the meeting room, running and telling the lords the matter is urgent. Annoyed by the sudden interruption, the Duke of the main house questions why they would barge in like that. Out of breath, the soldier reports that the sons of the main house and the branch family are engaged in a duel in the arena. Shocked by the news, Hyfrid and the Duke exchange tense looks, not believing what they just heard. Without wasting a second, the Viscount runs desperately through the castle corridors to try to prevent a tragedy. Upon reaching the main balcony, Alphen runs towards her father asking for help as he demands to know what happened. Laughing, a bearded nobleman just points his finger to the center of the courtyard below. The entire crowd surrounds the arena, watching the tense confrontation between the 2 young men of the same lineage. Watching the scene with concern, the patriarch hears comments that the outcome of this fight could change everything. Beside him, a blonde man watches the commotion with a very curious expression. Finding the situation amusing, the bearded man comments that this peaceful festival might end up getting very ugly. Down below, Darius raises his glowing sword and calls the MC a mutt for trying to challenge the ducal house. The crowd is impressed to see the young man's 4-wing crest, confirming the level of a legitimate hare. With a confident smile, the sadist tells the rookie to reveal his own magic mark for everyone to see. Seeing that Aster doesn't move, his opponent mocks him, asking if he's ashamed of his own level. Maintaining a cold expression, the boy agrees that it would indeed be very humiliating to show off like that. The hare is visibly irritated by his enemy's audacity and calmness in the face of such power. Taking a step forward, the sadist warns that if he wins, he'll demand an apology, but Aster retorts that if he wins, he'll make him his pet dog. Consumed by fury, Darius leaps forward and delivers a crushing blow towards the MC's head. Without showing any effort, the boy raises his blade and perfectly parries the brutal impact. The force of the attack makes Aster slide back a bit, but he holds his combat stance firm. Out of the corner of his eye, the young man analyzes his opponent's strength without a hint of desperation. Enveloped in a red aura, the hare presses his weapon and claims this is the absolute power of those who possess it. A frantic sequence of blows begins, with the sadist attacking from all sides with brutality. On the castle balcony, Alphen clasps her hands and screams her brother's name in pure panic, seeing the violence of the fight. Watching everything calmly, the bearded noble notices that the here's sword technique is still very immature. However, an explosion of energy throws both of them back, proving that raw power makes up for the flowed movements. The magic of a single wing is often compared to the fragile flame of a common candle. At that moment, Darius charges forward, slicing through the wind surrounded by an intense light, showing that 4 wings create an explosion. Totally confident in his magical advantage, he taunts, asking where all that courage from before went. Maintaining the suffocating offensive, the young man questions if all the rookie's threats were just empty words. Raising his sword high, the enemy concentrates all his fury and demands that the adopted boy show his true strength. Considering the fight over, the blonde lord cracks a wide smile, predicting a certain victory for the main house. The lethal blade descends at maximum speed to end the battle once and for all. Suddenly, a gigantic golden aura explodes from Aster's body, blocking the heavy attack instantly. The sadist's eyes widen in pure shock as he feels the absurd density of the energy against his weapon. With a smirk, the MC glares at his rival and tells him he's been talking way too much. Using only the strength of his wrist, the boy easily repels the impact and throws his opponent backward. Dominating the center of the arena, Aster displays an imposing magic that illuminates the entire courtyard around him. He reveals that he spent 10 long years training to control his mana at the Viscount's house, just to get his revenge. Without giving his enemy a moment to breathe, the young man advances and swings his glowing blade with extreme violence. A massive shockwave hits Darius' head, forcing the hare to retreat defensively. The young man's boots drag across the courtyard floor as he desperately tries not to fall from the impact. Watching the turnaround, the MC's other blood brother is completely terrified by the scene. With heavy and relentless blows, Aster crushes his opponent's guard, pushing him back further and further. The hare grits his teeth in indignation, refusing to accept that he's being pressured despite having 4 wings. But the boy's icy expression shows that the power gap between them is simply an abyss. The nobility in the stands panics as they watch the legitimate hare being mercilessly crushed. A brutal attack sends the sadist flying into the air as spectators wonder where this monster came from. Like a golden bolt, the boy advances at an imperceptible speed, ready for the finishing blow. On the balcony, Viscount Hyfrid starts to sweat, realizing the situation has gotten completely out of control. Suspended in the air and covered in wounds, Darius's eyes widen, consumed by the purest terror of his impending end. Just then, the trauma of his past life resurfaces with the disturbing image of Duke Roderick laughing in his face. Consumed by a dark hatred, Aster's energy darkens, reflecting the murderous rage he has held in for years. Seeing the blade approach his face, the pathetic hare begs tearfully for him to stop the attack. Desperate about the imminent tragedy, the patriarch shouts his son's name, begging him not to do something crazy. Hearing nothing, the MC lands a devastating blow that slams the enemy into the ground, kicking up a huge cloud of dust. With his arms crossed, the bearded lord just watches the duel's conclusion with a very serious expression. Sheathing his weapon calmly, Aster lands elegantly as the smoke begins to clear in the arena. On his knees and trembling with fear, Darius hears the warning that next time he should show up wearing rags. Looking over his shoulder, the boy mocks his cousin, assuring him that he doesn't mind getting dirty one bit. Walking victoriously through the destroyed courtyard, the young man assures himself that he is no longer that wingless good for nothing. Alphen leans over the castle balcony, breathing a sigh of relief to see her younger brother emerge from that mess unscathed. Satisfied with the outcome of the fight, Aster realizes that just putting that arrogant jerk in his place has already made his mind feel much lighter. However, a terrifying gaze glares from the darkness, filled with pure murderous rage. An overwhelming magical pressure plummets from the balcony straight into the arena, immediately catching the boy's attention. The MC tenses up and raises his head, feeling that heavy energy and instantly recognizing the presence. High on the stairs, the imposing figure of Duke Roderick himself appears, exuding a brutal red aura. Sweat drips down the young man's face as he stares at the cruel man who destroyed his life in the past. Around the arena, the nobles whisper in complete shock that the Viscount's son actually managed to humiliate the legitimate heir. But the chatter focuses on the fact that the leader of the main family would never accept having his name dragged through the mud like that. Watching it all up close, Hyfrid swallows hard, predicting that the situation is about to spin way out of control. Lying on the dirty ground, Darius raises his bloodied face as he senses the approach of the absolute leader of the entire lineage. Sensing the threat, our hero remains on high alert, tracking the imposing figure walking towards him. From the top of the balcony, Roderick descends the stone steps, emanating an overwhelming power that silences everyone in the courtyard. Aware of the real danger, Asura refuses to back down and lets his own golden aura overflow from his body as a defense. With a quick and extremely heavy leap, the Duke lands hard in the center of the tournament's cracked floor. Showing no fatherly mercy, Roderick grabs his own son by the collar and lifts him off the ground like a rag. The heir cowardly points his finger at his opponent, accusing him of disrespecting the absolute authority of the main branch. Begging for help, Darius cries for his father to use his monstrous magic to crush the insolent adopted boy once and for all. But suddenly, a thick blade descends with relentless violence and pierces the young man's hand straight into the rock floor. The impact is absurd, and the coward lets out a scream of agonizing pain, feeling his own flesh being torn without any warning. In the stands, the nobles panic completely, witnessing such a gratuitous attack from the military commander himself. Even Asura is caught completely off guard by the old man's merciless attitude towards his own injured blood. Staring at the young man pinned to the ground, the patriarch angrily questions how a miserable loser dares to speak with such pride in front of him. Seeing that all sanity has vanished, Hyfrid shouts from the top of the castle, ordering his brother to stop this madness immediately. Ignoring the order, Roderick raises his sword, declaring that someone so weak who can't even get revenge loses the right to wield a weapon. The lethal blade plummets with maximum force, ready to sever the arm of the heir who failed to represent the family name. However, a blue flash cuts through the air at high speed, intercepting the deadly blow by millimeters at the last second. The thunderous clash of swords echoes through the courtyard as the Duke furiously asks what the adopted boy thinks he's doing. Firmly blocking the brutal attack, the MC reminds him that the defeated cousin still hasn't formally apologized to his sister. Facing the monster head-on, Asura ironically asks him to save the heavy punishment for after that apology, calling him uncle. Enveloped in a dense magical aura, Roderick scoffs, questioning if the simple rescued orphan really thinks he's part of this prestigious lineage. Maintaining a tough defense, the young man retorts that he learned very well from his adoptive father about the immense pride of a knight and the weight of that name. The old warrior remains completely silent, just glaring at the insolent child. Exploding with raw power, the Duke accuses his nephew of tarnishing the family's untouchable honor completely unnecessarily. Watching the heavy argument from afar, one of the lords present follows the unfolding of this political crisis with great interest. Beside him, another aristocrat shakes his head, agreeing that this has gone too far and can't be forgiven as a simple squabble. Leaning on the upper balcony, the invited minister supports the king's words, stating that the adopted boy needs to pay dearly for his audacity. In a merciless tone, the cruel patriarch recalls that in the past, the Viscount himself had to sacrifice an entire arm to atone for his failures. The pressure against the MC's blade increases absurdly as the old man demands to know which body part he will give up now. Without showing the slightest hint of fear, Asura raises his face with his head held high and speaks without abandoning family formality. The boy guarantees that the fight was a legitimate duel, and that he only drew his steel to defend his own house from his cousin's insults. Hearing that bold response, the great commander's face darkens, refusing to tolerate such disrespect from a subordinate. With great courage, the young man repeats his enemy's phrase about weak losers and firmly swears he will not give up a single finger as a prize. In the safe area, Alphen trembles with terror, clinging to her father, absolutely certain the monster is going to murder her little brother right there. The unusual scene draws open laughter from the mocking spectator, who finds it hilarious that a boy of only 10 would stand up to his own end like that. Faced with the child's direct audacity, Roderick's gaze darkens, becoming even more threatening and murderous than before. With a spine-chilling coldness, he gets the message and pulls his own sword back, ending the contest of raw strength. Moving his heavy boots, the patriarch gets into an official combat stance and tells his nephew to prepare for a real fight. Completely caught off guard by the sudden change in attitude, the boy breaks into a cold sweat, seeing his doom approaching. In the blink of an eye, the MC's eyes widen in fear as he sees the lightning fast advance cut through the air towards him. A massive explosion of absurd power devastates the center of the arena, sending huge chunks of debris flying in all directions. Completely in shock from the deafening impact, the young woman brings her hands to her mouth, fearing the worst for the youngest of the house. Consumed by uncontrollable despair, Hyfrid screams for his brother, begging for the love of all that is holy that he stop this disproportionate attack. In the midst of the fierce storm of unleashed energy, the experienced warrior just keeps his face focused and utterly lethal. Holding nothing back, the leader unleashes a sword swing so colossal it projects a horizontal shockwave capable of cracking the walls. The monstrous force of the movement rips open the stone floor, creating a huge trench that erases any trace of what was in front of it. Desperate, the adoptive father finally jumps into the dusty arena, shouting his son's name as he searches for his small body. A massive fissure displays the trail of pure destruction, proving why that man is considered the Empire's ultimate military force. Viscount Hyfryd freezes in fear, sweating profusely as he notes the geological damage caused by that simple warning strike. Slowly, the thin smoke dissipates, revealing Astor still standing, sliding his feet on the gravel to keep his balance on the demolished terrain. Breathing with great difficulty and bleeding from his forehead, the rookie warrior faces the monster, proving he refused to fall before the impossible. Observing this bizarre resistance, the Duke lowers his arm in a rare gesture, showing a tiny hint of surprise at the insect's resilience. As swift as the wind, Hyfryd gets in the way, hastily drawing his weapon, willing to use his own life to shield the child from another blow. Tense, the man throws his head back, checking over his shoulder to confirm if the boy survived that red storm without losing any limbs. Gently touching his adopted son's shoulder, the Lord calls the boy's name, finally relieved to see that the worst didn't happen in the arena. Despite showing bruises and scrapes, Astor looks up proudly, assuring him he kept his promise not to give up even a single fingernail. Absurdly impressed with the boy's divine feat, the Viscount agrees with relief, calling the child's performance something genuinely magnificent. The madness ceases, and the atmosphere breathes again as the stands silently watch the conclusion of the clash that shook high society. Breaking the uncomfortable ice, one of the invited ministers comes down the stairs, criticizing the great Duke for acting so low towards a newcomer. The aristocrat argues that if the kid had gotten away with puffing out his chest for free, the main family's honor would become a joke, suggesting that this draw was the perfect outcome. Taking refuge in the darkness to catch his breath, the youngest of the lower branch immediately gains the status of an urban legend for having faced the lion and come back in one piece. Thrilled by the top power display, the chubby lord points his finger, confessing he feared the whole clan would split in two today. With a severe wrinkle on his face, old Roderick sheathes what's left of his patience, sensing that the current order of the system will be turned upside down very soon. The emotional and physical shock finally shuts down our hero's engine, and he collapses exhausted, supported in the desperate arms of his united family. Staring at the calm sky, the few analysts in the audience feel that this chaotic birth foretells the beginning of a blizzard capable of shattering entire continents. In the training arena, Astor lands a heavy blow with a wooden sword, knocking his opponent to the ground. Lying on the dirty ground, the breathless soldier praises the young master's technique, stating the move was simply splendid. The MC remains standing with a firm posture, absorbing the fatigue of the intense training without losing focus on the battle. Watching from afar, two guards are startled by the brutal skill of a boy only 10 years old. They comment that his absurd motivation surely came after defeating Duke Roderick's third son in that bloody festival. Slicing through the air with his sword, Astor reflects on how the main family always looked down on the Viscount's branch with total contempt. He charges forward with speed, knowing his display of power during the tournament already served to shut many people up. Unleashing a sequence of rapid attacks, the boy is sure the jokes are over, but he knows the real barrier is still the ducal house. Landing another heavy blow in training, he admits to himself that he wanted to test his real strength to its absolute limit that day. The young man's eyes overflow with ambition, revealing his frustration at not being able to show everything he was capable of in front of that entire nobility. Easily blocking a charge, the harsh reality hits hard when he recognizes that his current level isn't enough to take out Roderick. Leaping high to finish the fight, our hero understands that the wing mark only shows magical capacity and that this gift is useless without mastery. The memory of the golden explosion invades his mind, reminding him that to this day, he can't access or control all the raw power of the 7 wings. Crashing down with the training blade against the soldier, he laments having to hold back his own strength all the time for fear of losing control. A spark of determination shines on his face, proving he will find a way to master this monstrous magic, no matter the cost. The final impact shatters the wooden staff on the ground, kicking up dust all over the training courtyard. Looking around the arena covered with defeated guards, the boy demands aloud if there's no one left to continue the fight. At that moment, a familiar voice catches his attention, warning him that he's being too rough on the house's men. Walking calmly across the field, Alphen approaches her brother and tells him that Viscount Hyfryd is calling for him at the castle. Immediately, the boy obeys the order, saying he'll go meet the patriarch right away. However, upon focusing entirely on the girl, Aster blinks in surprise and comments on the combat gear she's wearing. Not understanding his surprise, the young woman turns her face, confused, waiting for an explanation. Casually, he mentions it's very rare to see her in that tactical gear since she always complained the outfit wasn't cute at all. Sighing lightly, Alphen confesses that watching the brutal duel made her realize she couldn't continue being so weak and dependent. This sudden change in attitude genuinely impresses our hero with his older sister's determination. Pointing her wooden sword with an excited smile, she guarantees that as soon as he gets back from the meeting, he'll have to train hard with her. Inspired by that positive energy, the young man agrees with the idea, feeling like he's finally truly home. Walking away through the courtyard full of fallen soldiers, he asks playfully for her to go easy on him during training. Arriving in the main hall of the mansion, Aster stops before the family leader's room and knocks on the heavy oak door. Politely asking for permission, our hero enters the office, illuminated by the evening light. Sitting in his imposing chair, Hyfrid tells the boy to make himself comfortable as the young man asks the reason for the sudden summons. Without hesitation, Aster sits in the luxurious armchair across from his adoptive father, waiting for the conversation to begin. The Viscount recalls that a decade has passed since the rescue in the snow and confesses he planned to wait for the boy to grow older to talk about this. Just then, the nobleman pushes a small velvet box across the table, making the MC quite curious about the object. The case opens to reveal a shining ring with a red jewel set in the center, drawing all attention to itself. Staring at his son with extreme seriousness, the patriarch reveals that the ring is the definitive proof marking the next successor of the Viscounty. The news hits Aster like a ton of bricks as he hears from the Lord's own mouth the wish for him to take full control of the family in the future. The man continues his explanation, stating that their branch is in a very dangerous and delicate political position right now. He emphasizes that even as a lesser house, they carry the weight of the main name and have a gigantic territory that must be protected at all costs. With the weight of the lineage on his shoulders, the leader insists he can't leave the heir's seat empty for much longer in the face of external threats. Worried about the family's reaction, the boy directly questions if his adoptive sisters agree with this absurd decision. Sighing, Hyfrid says the girls who were at the Knight Academy will return in 3 days, and that he plans to settle it with them then. The image of the two young warrior women comes to the MC's mind as he reflects with surprise on his older sister's imminent return to the mansion. Breaking into a cold sweat just imagining the scene, Aster is certain they will hate this succession business, especially the explosive sister Kudryavka. The father scratches his face, discouraged, agreeing that the girl detests her younger brother simply for being a man and possessing the miracle of the 7 wings. Without a second thought, the young man pushes the box back across the table, rejecting the offer of succession very directly. The young man lowers his head, justifying that he still hasn't mastered his own magic and that in the past, he almost took out his sister for being an inexperienced kid. In a very sincere tone, he confesses to the Lord that he doesn't have the confidence to face his furious sisters with that ring on his finger. Amused by the boy's absurd maturity, the Viscount lets out a restrained laugh and comments that he sometimes doubts if he was ever really a child. Understanding the refusal, Hyfrid pulls out a long wooden case, stating that the ring was just a prize for his performance in the tournament. Unlocking the new box, the patriarch bets his son will be much more interested in the gift stored inside. Our hero's eyes widen in total shock as he immediately recognizes the absurd relic hidden in the velvet. It's the legendary magic sword Gram, a mana-devouring weapon capable of withstanding and controlling the destructive power of the 7 wings without breaking. Soon after, the two head to an isolated clearing in the forest where the Viscount claims it's a safe place for tests. Walking tensely, Aster asks if the mansion's gym wasn't enough, but the man assures him it's better to prevent any disasters. The memory of the boy himself destroying the castle walls during previous training sessions proves that all this care about the location is very necessary. Holding the metallic hilt of the demonic relic, the Lord explains that the weapon is only passed down to firstborns, but he made a vital exception. With a firm movement, the experienced knight draws the weapon from its sheath, revealing its curious shape to the boy. Aster is left completely speechless upon seeing the object up close and noticing an absolutely bizarre detail about the prestigious sword. Stuttering in confusion, our hero questions if that's even a weapon, since from the hilt up, there's no blade connected. The Viscount ignores the question and swings it through the air, explaining that the secret is revealed the moment mana comes into contact with the steel. A dense energy materializes from the hilt, forming a blade of pure, pulsating red magic that aggressively cuts through the air. The blast of force generated by the nobleman's simple movement creates a massive trail of destruction, effortlessly tearing up the ground. The impact carves a frightening trench through the middle of the forest, knocking down trees in its path as if they were mere twigs. Holding the lethal weapon firmly, the man warns that if the user's magic is weak, the sword itself will devour their life force until they're dry. Dispelling the energy blade, the patriarch tosses the silver hilt towards the boy, challenging him to test the dangerous equipment. In a quick reflex, the MC grabs the relic's hilt, feeling the historical weight that the cursed object carries. Completely focused, the boy gets into a combat stance and begins to channel his monstrous golden aura directly into the cold metal. A colossal explosion of mana overflows from the young man's body, illuminating the entire dark area of the forest as if the sun itself had descended. The jewel embedded at the base glows intensely as Aster panics, feeling the weapon sucking his power on its own, against his will. The force is so uncontrolled that a gigantic pillar of golden light rips through the domain's skies, visible for miles. At the city's military base, soldiers are left speechless by the extreme brightness, discussing whether a comet just hit the Viscount's lands. Walking through the castle's open corridors, the older sister stops in her tracks upon noticing the insane glow cutting through the clouds. With a drop of sweat running down her face, the young woman gives a tense smile, absolutely certain that all this exaggeration can only be Aster's doing. Back in the isolated forest, our hero admires the gigantic golden blade he just forged, smiling excitedly at the absurd power he can finally control. Shocked by the flash, Viscount Hyfrid confesses that the most unbelievable thing of all is precisely that power. Just then, Aster's energy forms a gigantic hurricane in the sky, proving the raw strength the relic has awakened. Focused on his father's words, the boy hears that there has never been anyone with the mark of the 7 wings in the entire history of Elmim. Securing his son's future, the nobleman says that if he can completely master this magic, one day he will make history. Immediately, the imposing figure of Roderick comes to the MC's mind as he hears that he will surpass even the feared Duke. Changing the tone of the conversation, the Lord warns that a power too great inevitably ends up causing many conflicts. To him, the shining mark on his back is the main reason why the boy needs to hide his strength from the rest of the world. The Viscount lists the imminent dangers, warning that many will feel envy, and others will try to use him or simply eliminate him. Frighteningly, the threat of being taken out becomes real in the young man's vision with the image of a bloodied blade. Extending his hand to his adopted son, Hyfrid asks him to focus on not regretting being powerless in the future. As a final piece of advice, the experienced knight encourages the boy to use this time to truly strengthen himself against everything. Without a second's hesitation, Aster firmly shakes his father's hand and swears to himself that he will not live another miserable life. Filled with determination, our hero thanks him for the gift and promises to master both the 7 wings and this demonic sword. 3 days later, the entire family gathers in the castle's main hall to welcome the new arrivals. Suddenly, the door opens, revealing Sister Kudryavka accompanied by Malfa, loudly announcing their return home. Wanting to get attention, the warrior clears her throat quite conceitedly in the middle of the main hall. Opening her arms with enthusiasm, Kudryavka calls her younger sisters for a warm welcome home hug. However, ignoring the red-haired young woman, the girls run straight to the sweet Malfa, celebrating her return. Confused, the swordswoman is left completely hanging in the middle of the room, not understanding why she was rejected like that. Quickly, the younger ones justify their refusal by saying the older sister always messes up their hair during hugs. Trying to hide her embarrassment, the proud knight turns her face away, assuring them that someone as refined as her would never do that. At that exact moment, the warrior's sharp gaze focuses precisely on the inattentive figure of Alphen standing near the staircase. In a perfect leap, the newcomer grabs the girl in a suffocating hug, asking if she's been a good girl. Desperate, Alphen struggles, asking her to stop while having her cheeks mercilessly squashed right there. Watching the commotion up close, the noblewoman asks her parents about Aster's whereabouts, since he isn't at the reception. In response, the Viscount calmly points outside and begins to explain where the youngest of the family has gotten himself. Getting the message immediately, Kudryavka's expression darkens, showing she already knows what the boy is up to. Far away in the forest, a colossal explosion of red magic kicks up dust and destroys the ground around it. Fighting against the strong wind generated by the weapon, The MC tries his best to control the relic's raw power. Completely exhausted and sweaty, the young man grits his teeth, frustrated that he still can't master that insane flow of mana. Analyzing the unstable red energy blade, Asura admits that right now, he can only suppress the power instead of using it. Staring at the heavy weapon, he frustratedly wonders how his adoptive father managed to handle it so naturally. Just then, Kudryavka appears, walking calmly through the woods, ironically praising the young man's exaggerated flash. Noticing his sister's approach, our hero greets her and questions why she isn't at the castle getting hugs. Maintaining a very arrogant posture, the warrior mocks the rookie and comments that he's being very cold to his visitor. Leaping from a tall tree, the girl asks if he thinks he's special just because he got some praise at the sword festival. Averting his tense gaze, the MC prefers to focus on her excellent performance in the Knight Academy's missions. With that, he notices the platinum medal on his sister's shoulder, recognizing that she was the only one to receive that honor this year. Firmly gripping the hilt of her sword, the young woman states that without these merits, she could never inherit the family's position. Using a direct, accusatory tone, the swordswoman reveals she already heard about his refusal to take over the leadership of the house. Trying to cool things down, the boy explains that he just believed he didn't have the necessary qualifications for the position. Suddenly, a metallic sound cuts through the air as the knight slowly begins to draw her blade from its sheath. Advancing slowly towards her adopted brother, she grumbles in a hurt tone about the unacceptable cruelty of the Viscount's attitude. Ready for a clash, Kudryavka points her weapon and states that everyone knows very well what her lifelong dream has always been. Completely caught off guard by the hostility, Asura's eyes widen as he realizes the situation just got very dangerous. Without any warning, the warrior unleashes a swift vertical slash, launching a wave of blue energy at her target. Using his trained reflexes, the young man dodges the magic blade by a hair's breadth, letting the lethal blow pass right by him. With extreme brutality, the attack hits a huge tree dead on, splitting the trunk in half and sending splinters flying. Landing on the cratered forest floor, the MC demands to know the reason for that deadly attack coming completely out of nowhere. The girl just gets into a combat stance, warning that it's been a while since she tested the skills of the house's rookie. Resting her sword on her shoulders with confidence, Kudryavka warns that she won't hold back on the next blow. Terrified by the sudden madness, Asura raises the incomplete relic and begs her to stop this heavy-handed joke. In a ruthless and cold manner, the young woman asks if he would give the same pathetic excuse if he were facing an enemy. The word echoes heavily in the boy's mind, leaving him confused about being treated as a real threat in his own home. Teaching him the hard way, the knight warns that on the battlefield, any hesitation results in being mercilessly crushed. In a quick blink of an eye, the warrior charges forward, tearing through the air, proving that her murderous intent is very real. The young man desperately raises his weapon to block the impact, stating he can barely control his own magical power properly. Just then, a red aura explodes from the mana, devouring sword as he realizes he needs to fight with all he's got to stay alive. Finally, the two blades clash violently, creating intense sparks that illuminate the entire shadow of the surrounding trees. The colossal collision of force destroys the dirt ground, sending heavy stones flying in an absurdly powerful shockwave. Forcing the blade with style, Kudryavka praises her brother's defensive capabilities against the blows she perfected at the Great Academy. The boy uses all his strength to hold back the heavy impact as the bizarre instability of his magic sword threatens to give way. Pushing the weapon mercilessly, his sister aggressively criticizes the absurd lack of control he has over his mana flow. Consequently, the continuous impact drags the MC backward, his boots tearing through the muddy forest soil. Sweating from the continuous crushing pressure, Asura remembers how merciless his older sister always was during training. Old childhood memories surface, showing the swordswoman relentlessly facing him in this same dangerous forest. In those difficult times, the young man already understood he suffered that persecution simply for being the only boy with the right of succession. Holding fragile wooden swords, the girl always flaunted her mark on her back, thinking she was superior to anyone else there. Today, he compares her to a true uncontrolled storm who constantly made up excuses to drag him into absurd duels. The thick dust kicks up with another heavy attack in the present, confirming his old conclusion that she is his natural enemy. Observing the young man's firm stance, the warrior praises her younger brother's tenacity, proving the rivalry between them is real. In response, an eruption of red mana envelops our hero's body as he tries to level the colossal difference in strength. Completely furious with the glow, Kudryavka screams that someone as weak as him will never be worthy of leading the house. Safe in the comfort of the castle, Alphen observes the distant flash of magic and asks if her father should really leave the two of them alone. Worried by the frightening brutality of the fight, the young woman fears this sibling squabble might end with a body by the end of the day. Hyfrid watches the scene calmly, assuring her that the two are excellent rivals and that all this recklessness won't end in tragedy. Alphen remains very concerned about the situation, just hoping her father is truly right about this. Changing the subject, she questions the real reason she was summoned from the academy, doubting it's just about the succession. With a much more serious posture, the Viscount agrees, closing the small box on the table. The young woman is completely shocked upon recognizing what this urgent matter is about. It's an official summons sent directly from the ruthless main family of Elmheim. Apparently, the shadowy elders who control the ducal house are demanding to see their newest grandson up close. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Alphen perfectly understands the level of danger they have on their hands. Very tense about the future, the patriarch admits that in the worst-case scenario, their family could end up losing Aster forever. Far away, the brutal battle between the siblings continues to destroy the forest with intense magical explosions. Struggling to hold the magic weapon, the boy shouts that he already refused the leadership of the house and reminds his sister she heard that very well. Furious with his response, Kudryavka charges forward, stating that it's precisely this cowardly refusal that makes her so angry. She delivers a crushing blow from above, forcing our hero to endure an absurd weight on his defense. Feeling the insane impact, the MC compares the girl's disproportionate strength to that of a monster swinging a giant hammer. The young man's hands tremble violently as he tries his best not to let his own guard be broken. The crushing pressure continues to push Aster violently backward, kicking up dust. Desperate with his opponent's fury, he asks her to stop for a second and just listen to him for once. Completely focused on the attack, the warrior ignores his plea and accuses him of simply running away from his responsibility. A new explosion of energy throws the boy back, breaking his defensive combat stance. Sliding across the dirt, he grumbles, impressed by the absurd raw strength the knight possesses. Relentlessly, she plants her weapon in the ground, declaring that just swinging a blade is the act of a useless warrior. Walking firmly towards him, the young woman warns that being able to control one's own magic only makes you average. According to the swordswoman, the true elite is only reached when one completely masters the path of the demonic sword. Stopping in the middle of the clearing, Kudryavka sighs, showing deep disappointment with her younger brother's level. Displaying her 5 shining wings, she explains that the difference in wings multiplies strength, proving a colossal power gap. Being very direct, the girl admits her energy is totally inferior to the magical miracle the boy carries. Even with this huge disadvantage, his sister criticizes the fact that he continues to avoid a direct confrontation of strength with her. With a mocking smile, she questions if the rookie doesn't trust his own power to fight for real. Hitting a nerve, the knight asks if he's terrified of losing control of his mana like he did 3 years ago. This direct provocation hits our hero hard, making him reflect on whether he's really that afraid of the power of the 7 wings. Staring at his own unstable weapon, the MC is shocked to realize he's been unconsciously putting a limiter on his energy all this time. He finally understands that the relic's failure happens precisely because he keeps suppressing his magical flow without realizing it. Cutting off his thoughts, Kudryavka charges, tearing through the air and screaming in anger that her younger brother has everything she ever dreamed of. Preparing a heavy blow, she warns that if he's going to waste this raw gift, she'll take control of everything herself. Consumed by a blind rage, the warrior plummets from the sky, demanding that her brother hand over all that absurd power to her. Realizing the real murderous intent in the attack, the young man's gaze changes, and he focuses entirely on lethal survival. An apocalyptic clash of red and blue magic completely devastates the center of the clearing, pushing the trees away. For the first time in her life, the swordswoman is incredulous to see her ultimate attack parried head-on. With a confident smile, the boy thanks her for the beatdown, stating that her provocations finally woke him up. Fully alert, the young woman notices with confusion that her opponent is advancing without even forging a full magic blade. She prepares to defend, certain that his monstrous energy reserve couldn't have run out so quickly. In a swift upward motion, our hero concentrates all his hidden power into a single, extremely dense point. Knowing he can't handle using it all, he focuses on releasing the maximum lethal power for just a tiny fraction of a second. Impressed by the rookie's brilliant strategy, Kudryavka smirks, praising his raw creativity under pressure. Focused on winning, Aster swears to himself that he has no intention of wasting this second chance at life. The legendary 7 wings shine on our hero's back, proving he has decided to fully embrace this priceless magical gift. Memories of his family surface in his mind as he reflects that no matter how many things he gained, he still felt completely empty. Hearing her younger brother's stray words, the warrior is quite confused about this bizarre story of a second life. Without giving her time to think, a colossal torrent of energy hits the knight's blade with extreme violence. Aster forces the lethal impact with all his might to definitively break his older sister's stubborn defense. Caught completely off guard by the absurd offensive, Kudryavka's sword is torn from her hands and sent flying. With her opponent disarmed, the mana-devouring blade advances straight for the young woman's chest without any obstacle. Purely on instinct, the MC tries his best to hold back the final blow to avoid taking out his own sister right there. The knight's eyes widen in pure terror as she sees the deadly magic so close to her frightened face. A monstrous explosion of red aura sweeps through everything in its path, creating a blinding flash in the middle of the destroyed woods. Suddenly, silence takes over, and Kudryavka wakes with a start, lying in a comfortable, clean bed. Still dazed from the end of the battle, she looks around and recognizes she's safe inside her room at the castle. Approaching the bedside, Alpha notes with relief that her older sister has finally opened her eyes again. The young woman pulls back the curtains, letting the sunlight in, and comments that the combatant slept for a long time. Desperate, the warrior sits up in bed with a jolt, demanding to know how that insane duel in the forest ended. Casually slicing an apple, Alphen says that Aster himself carried her, unconscious, to the safety of the mansion. With a sweet smile, she repeats the boy's lame excuse that his opponent passed out from travel exhaustion. Clutching the bedsheet, the warrior knows perfectly well that this story about falling asleep mid-fight is a blatant lie. The memory of the lethal blow returns to her mind, confirming she was absolutely certain she was going to be taken out at that moment. However, she clearly remembers the rookie dissipating all the demonic energy from the sword milliseconds before it pierced her body. Consequently, only the residual blast of magical wind hit her head, causing enough impact to knock her out. Immediately, the pure image of her little brother waving his helpless hands in the past fills the defeated knight's thoughts. Analyzing the scene, she understands he would never hurt her, but admits that the murderous red aura seemed extremely real. With a very gentle smile, the proud swordswoman confesses that the adopted boy has become a relentless little monster. Determined to settle things properly, she grips the hilt of her own sword and asks where the MC is hiding now. Getting to her feet with a lot of energy, the young woman declares loud and clear that she refuses to accept this humiliating defeat lying down. Cutting the mood, Alphen dryly informs her that if she wants a rematch, she'll have to wait, as our hero has already left the lands. Completely taken by surprise by the sudden news of his trip, the combatant is left speechless before her younger sister. Worried, the young woman explains that an urgent summons from the main house arrived for the boy, and he left with the Viscount in a hurry. Upon hearing the name of the cruel ducal lineage, Kudryavka's face contorts in a mix of panic and deep concern for her brother. Inside the carriage, the MC is indignant, claiming that no one told him about this sudden trip. The vehicle travels along the stone streets, quickly moving away from the Viscounty's lands. Looking at the landscape through the window, the boy reflects on the dark fate that awaits them. Sitting across from him, Heifred explains they are on their way to meet the old leaders who command the family from the shadows. The main lineage's castle rises on the horizon with a heavy aura of absolute authority. Worried, the Viscount doesn't understand why those elders decided to summon the boy now of all times. With a very serious expression, Aster deduces the matter must be the sword dance festival. The patriarch confirms his suspicion, remembering that the family's old guard values honor far more than their own lives. People who tarnish that prestige are thrown to the wolves without any mercy. Startled by the boy's calmness, the man asks where on earth he heard such an absurd story. Without losing his cool, the young man states he is already fully prepared to face exile, or even a private execution. Anguished, his adoptive father questions if he's really sure about leaving without even saying goodbye to his family. Lowering his gaze, our hero assures him this is the best thing to do under the current circumstances. He argues that his older sister hates him anyway, so she'll be able to breathe a sigh of relief without him around. Touching the hilt of his sword, the young man confesses that it's only thanks to his rivalry with Kudryavka that he learned to master the relic. Gripping the hilt firmly, Aster feels he can finally draw out the power of the 7 wings effectively. In a mature tone, he asks his father not to try to save him, vowing to survive on his own. A loud thud on the carriage roof suddenly interrupts the conversation. The boy's eyes widen, completely caught off guard by the sudden noise. Peeking upside down through the window, Kudryavka shows great excitement upon finding the two of them. The vehicle keeps accelerating while the MC can't believe she ran all that way. Jumping inside, the warrior complains about her younger brother's cruelty in running off without a single word. Hyfrid scolds the young woman, reminding her of the real danger involved in a visit to the main house. Sitting next to her brother, she assures him she perfectly understands the level of that threat. The swordswoman states that a summons like this means the family is in an extremely critical situation. The image of the dark castle looms, along with the fear that our hero may never return home. Trying to calm things down, Astor assures them in a calm tone that he's just going to have a quick chat with the old folks. Pointing a finger in his face, Kudryavka changes her tone and declares in no uncertain terms that she despises him deeply. The boy blinks in confusion as he hears his sister list the reasons, such as him being a man and having received the magical miracle. She clenches her fists, indignant at how he acts like an adult when he's just her little brother. Despite all the scolding, the boy says with great affection that she is still his precious family. Completely flustered, the knight crosses her arms and turns her face away under the Viscount's proud gaze. Maintaining her pose, she reminds the boy he needs to come back in one piece so they can have a real rematch. Casting a determined look, the young woman swears she won't allow a victory by forfeit. Without wasting time, the combatant nimbly jumps out of the moving carriage. Watching her leave, Astor wonders about the real reason for that lightning-fast visit. Caught off guard by her actions, he feels immense joy and silently thanks her for the support. Waving from a distance on the lit road, the girl hears his promise that he will return, no matter the cost. Finally, the convoy arrives at the imposing gates of the massive ducal estate. The armored guards block the passage, informing them that the lord of the house is already waiting inside. Hyfrid tries to dismiss the guides, claiming he knows the way, but the soldier refuses, ordering the escort. The patriarch senses the hostile atmosphere and understands they weren't summoned there as a loving part of the family. The young MC coldly analyzes the situation, aware that they have entered enemy territory. Staring at the sinister architecture of the place, he comments ironically how nostalgic it is to be back. In the training courtyard, several soldiers practice heavy combat, demonstrating the clan's military strength. Walking surrounded by guards, the Viscount asks his son to remain calm regardless of what he hears. He emphasizes that the real problem with this meeting are the people waiting for them inside. Curious, Astor looks at his adoptive father, wanting to know exactly who they are going to meet. The image of Darius comes to his mind, reminding him that the spoiled heir isn't around after having his hand crushed. Noticing his distraction, the Lord gets the boy's attention to confirm if he's paying attention. Snapping out of his thoughts, our hero nods, maintaining a completely carefree posture. To reassure the man, he promises that just for today, he will behave as passively as possible. The enormous wooden doors open, revealing a dark hall with a red carpet. The guards announce the arrival of Lord Hyfrid and his adopted son to the council. Walking down the long carpet, the two are greeted by a hoarse voice commenting on how long it's been. An old man with a white beard and a severe look confirms the arrival of his own grandson. The patriarch of the branch family immediately kneels as a sign of absolute respect to the elder. Observing the people sitting in the shadows, Hyfrid formally greets his great-grandfather. The boy feels a dense energy in the air and recognizes the dark presence that commands the family from behind the scenes. It is Zenith, the sixth official leader of the main house, revealing his time-worn face. The MC scans the hall with his eyes, noticing several other important figures gathered in the darkness. He quickly recognizes some of the nobles who were present on the day of the sword festival. Maintaining his posture, the young man deduces that Duke Roderick is not present at this meeting. Reading his reaction, Zenith confirms that the cruel commander did not attend. The old man explains that the current leader is too busy with the royal knights to waste time on trivial matters. Kneeling beside his father, Astor reflects that in his past life, he never had the chance to see this council up close. He concludes that gathering so many executives without the presence of the current head proves the immense influence of those shadows. Tense about the situation, Hyfrid asks what exactly this trivial matter is that brought them there. With a dry laugh, the elder realizes the Viscount already knows the answer very well. The memory of the brutal duel in the arena resurfaces as the old man accuses the boy of causing a public disgrace. Hearing the insult, our hero's gaze darkens, confirming that the whole mess was because of that clash. Defending his son, the patriarch argues that Roderick himself had already personally resolved this issue. Outraged, the other council members retort that it was just a show to fool everyone. Zenith decrees from behind that taking in an orphan was a mistake, warning that exile is the only fitting punishment. In a desperate leap, Aster raises his hands, begging them to stop and taking all the blame for the situation. It all starts with Aster taking the blame, trying to spare his adoptive father from the main house's punishment. But Hyfrid just lowers his head in complete silence. At this, the MC looks back, completely confused by the Lord's passive reaction. Old Zenith comments that the boy wasn't trained well, as a child shouldn't interrupt. The elder points out that they lead 12,000 knights under the prestigious name of Elmame. He explains that this massive military force does not have a unified mind. According to the leader, there are always ambitious people eyeing the top of the hierarchy. Therefore, he assures them this meeting is just to ensure the family's peace and security. Tapping his cane on the floor, Zenith decrees there is no proof the boy won't cause trouble. With that, the Viscount's eyes widen, feeling the weight of that unjust decision. The old man raises his sword and recalls the day the patriarch failed to protect the Lord. He makes a point of remembering that he forced Roderick to cut off Hyfrid's arm right there. Emanating a murderous aura, the leader demands the Viscount prove his loyalty by beheading the boy. Aster is completely shocked by the cruelty of that absurd order. However, maintaining his kneeling posture, Hyfrid directly and unshackably refuses the demand. The MC is deeply touched to hear that his father would rather take his own life than take his. Understanding the refusal, Zenith turns his back with total indifference. He rests on his cane, sealing the fate of everyone on the red carpet. Without showing any mercy, the elder orders the immediate execution. At that, the knights advance quickly with swords ready to exterminate the Viscount. Hyfrid draws his weapon to defend his son, showing he won't go down without a fight. But suddenly, Aster steps forward, questioning why his great-grandfather is so afraid of him. Hearing the provocation, the old man stops and glares at the boy. Surrounded by blades, our hero scoffs at the adults cowering in fear before their own dog. He challenges the elders, warning that he swears revenge if they touch his family. The Viscount tries to apologize for the situation, fearing the worst. Ripping his own shirt with force, the young man confesses he's terrible at staying quiet. One of the guards backs away, completely terrified by what he just saw. The legendary crest overflows on the young man's back, revealing the raw truth. Unleashing a colossal red energy, Aster decrees that the seven wings have become an enemy. Enveloped in an absurd aura, our hero tells the old men to think very carefully about the consequences. The entire council panics upon facing the magical miracle in person. Two nobles whisper among themselves, doubting that Mark is real after so many centuries. Another counselor breaks into a cold sweat, admitting the design is undeniably genuine. Zenith observes the boy with extreme caution, measuring the danger of the situation. With blades still pointed at him, the young man asks if they understand the weight of that power. Showing great confidence, he assures them he knows the extent of the surprise he's causing. Breaking the tense mood, the blue-haired lord starts laughing loudly and won't stop. Known as Count Maze, he apologizes for the interruption and asks the rookie to continue. Regaining control, Zenith explains that in ancient times, the wings were gifts from the spirits. This raw magic was passed down from generation to generation, strengthening humanity. Legend says that mystical beasts are the only true progenitors of wings in the world. However, the leader reinforces that no human had ever reached the seventh wing before. The boy listens to the explanation with great attention, awaiting the verdict. Assessing the situation, the elder questions if our hero claims to be a direct descendant of the spirits. Behind the young man, the Viscount remains in a combat stance, extremely tense. Aster stands firm in the center of the hall, without retreating a single millimeter. Being very direct, he throws the weight of his own power on the table and ignores questions about lineage. The boy warns that many rebellious nobles would love to have the owner of the Seven Wings as an ally. He positions himself as a living threat much greater than Duke Roderick himself. The council members are outraged by the child's absurd audacity. Celebrating the chaos, the MC describes the imminent civil war that will devastate the country. He states with absolute conviction that he has already witnessed this dark future once. Zenith glares at the boy, furious at being blackmailed in his own house. Underestimating the threat, the old man asks if the adopted boy really thinks he's worth all this risk. The young man retorts mockingly, challenging the leader to try and take him out right there if he thinks it's a lie. Leaning heavily on his cane, the old man warns that if he accepts the challenge, war will be declared. The leader firmly grips the hilt of his sword, ready to decimate his opponent in an instant. But at this critical moment, Count Maze claps, interrupting the murderous tension. The Lord stands up, stating they are just going in circles with this useless discussion. Showing great cunning, Maze suggests imposing a practical challenge to test the rookie. One of the elders revolts, questioning the Count's attitude in the middle of the crisis. Maintaining his calm, the nobleman points out it costs nothing to decide the boy's fate later. He calmly walks over to Aster, arguing that everyone wants to see the magical miracle in action. Staring at the injured young man, Maze confirms he has the strength to face difficult trials. The MC relaxes his shoulders upon realizing that this eccentric lord is his ally. Stomping his foot on the ground, Zenith agrees with the idea and tells the boy to follow him. The Dark Leader passes by the young man, grumbling that disciplining an insolent grandson is his duty. Arriving at a heavy gate, the old man opens the passage, revealing the dark testing grounds. It's a gigantic bunker connected directly to the city's water channels. Emanating a macabre aura, the elder explains they keep a dangerous magical beast imprisoned there. Hyfried and Aster listen to the final instructions, paying close attention to every detail. Drawing the sword gram, the young man confesses to his father that it was about time to reveal his secret. The Viscount warns his youngest to not let his guard down for even a second in that dark hole. Sliding down a heavy iron chain, Aster plummets into the darkness, ready for the slaughter. Our hero lands in the dark underground, while Count Maze watches the situation from above with great interest. Wading through the shallow water, the young man soon realizes the place is absolute pitch black. But he remains calm, assuring himself that it's not so dark as to leave him completely blind. Just then, the boy freezes for a moment upon seeing something bizarre right in front of him. Looking up at the light from the grate, the young man comments that he tried to give the beast a chance to explain itself. However, the monster did nothing but cry and scream until the end, making it impossible to keep watching. Heavy footsteps echo in the darkness, revealing the imposing presence of the magical beast approaching. From up high, Zenith warns his insolent grandson not to disappoint him in any way. With a terrifying roar from a gigantic demonic lion, the old man officially decrees the start of the deadly test. Facing the monster head on, Aster finally understands that the rumors about the family hiding a beast were true. Holding his sword firmly, he feels sorry for anyone born into this cursed house full of atrocities. Without wasting time, our hero charges straight at the giant lion, cutting through the air. The nobles up above are impressed by the boy's absurd speed. Completely calm in the face of danger, the MC scoffs, claiming he's much more afraid of his sister Kudryavka. In a swift move, he passes through the monster with a precise strike and lands right behind the creature. But Aster's confidence vanishes instantly as he realizes something is very wrong. He watches in shock as the beast regenerates the bizarre wound using disgusting tentacles. Understanding the gravity of the situation, the young man realizes he's fighting an undead creature. Grabbing the bars desperately, Hyfried screams, demanding to know why there's an abomination like that in the house's basement. With total coldness, old Zenith simply replies that the beast loves the smell of decay. The leader explains he brought the creature to devour corpses and serve as an indestructible training partner. This way, the main family never had trouble getting rid of unwanted bodies again. Hearing that, one of the counselors comments that an undead is a problem even for experienced knights. The man questions if they're really going to let the boy meet his end like that just for talking too much. Down below, the MC continues to relentlessly dodge the beast's violent attacks. Zenith tells the counselor to relax, assuring him that if the boy falls, it will be even more convenient for the family. While Hyfried remains tense, Count Maze just lets out a few laughs, finding the whole situation very entertaining. The blue-haired lord comments it would be a shame to lose someone who showed so much potential. Cheering for the rookie, he mentally pleads for Aster not to go down so easily. Unleashing a sequence of rapid cuts, the boy realizes all his effort is completely useless. Seeing the beast heal again, he's impressed by this absurd regeneration for a normal monster. Without backing down from the fight, our hero tries to remember how to eliminate such a pest once and for all. He concludes he would need sunlight, intense fire, or even weapons with sacred power. With the monster charging furiously, the young man admits that facing something like this without the right tools is foolish. But knowing there's no escape, he decides that using cheap tricks is unworthy of his power. Holding the sword with both hands, Aster concentrates all his energy to show his true worth. A colossal red ore explodes from the blade as he decrees he will crush the beast with raw force. The impact of the absurd blow kicks up a cloud of dust and debris all over the battlefield. The shockwave is so strong it throws the nobles back, startled by that oppressive magic. Regaining their balance, the counselors crowd the grate, trying to see if the kid won. Old Zenith just grumbles, observing the dust-filled crater with a grim face. In the middle of the smoke, the MC remains in a combat stance, waiting for the outcome of the attack. From above, the dark great-grandfather comments disdainfully that all that raw power was a real shame. Suddenly, the lion's gigantic paw tears through the smoke in a surprise attack against the boy. Unable to dodge in time, Aster takes the full impact and is violently thrown backward. The smoke clears, revealing the monster is still alive and already regenerating its lost limb. Desperate to see his son thrown so far, the Viscount shouts his name, clinging to the iron bars. But Count Maze quickly intervenes, warning the Lord not to be foolish enough to try and help. Furious with the meddling, Hyfrid asks if the Count really expects him to just watch the boy get taken out. Maintaining his irritating calm, the blue-haired nobleman asks the Viscount to keep his cool. He points back to the pit, indicating that the fight is still far from over. Getting up from the debris, the MC cracks an excited smile, realizing his ace in the hole worked. The roaring beast now displays red burns on its body, showing that its regeneration is failing. Excited by the discovery, the young man concentrates even more of that scarlet energy into his blade. He charges forward again, unleashing a storm of brutal cuts that relentlessly tear the lion apart. Fueled by adrenaline, Aster guarantees he will keep slicing the abomination until it stops healing. The attacks create a true vortex of destructive magic that completely swallows the creature. Watching the massacre, one of the counselors is dumbfounded by that absurd level of power. He questions if this display of crushing force isn't something entirely different from what they've ever seen. Just then, the violence of the blow is so great that even the stone floor, where the nobles are standing, begins to crumble. The guards quickly pull the old men back as the edge of the pit collapses into the darkness. Safe from the collapse, the family leader's eyes widen, impressed with what he just witnessed. Enveloped in the red tornado, Aster proudly displays the true and absolute power of the seven wings. As the dust settles and silence reigns, the trembling counselors approach, trying to understand what happened. Looking into the destroyed pit, one of the nobles notices that absolutely nothing is left of the giant beast. Old Zenith continues to stare at the arena in a heavy, evaluative silence. He concludes that the boy pulverized the entire undead creature by drowning it in an unreal amount of raw magic. Casually sheathing his sword, the young man proved you don't need technique when you have such overwhelming strength. The elder questions the Viscount if all this destruction was also part of his plan. Shaking his head, Hyfrid proudly confesses that his son's growth continues to surprise him every day. Seizing the moment, Count Maze turns to the great-grandfather and asks if the kid is officially approved for the test. Turning his back to the hole, the dark leader grumbles that no one there would dare to make any objections. As the old men leave the area, the eccentric lord shouts down, giving the good news of the victory. However, the Count laughingly warns that the climbing chains were completely destroyed by the explosion from the attack. Trapped in the crater he himself created, our hero lets out a sheepish smile and asks someone to throw down a rope. Back in the office, Zenith questions if the boy is really sure about his refusal. Aster confirms without hesitation, assuring him he has no interest in the main family's succession war, and that his presence would only make his cousins uneasy. He reinforces that his place is exclusively within the Viscounty, but the old man gives a dry laugh, asking if the young man thinks he's being humble. The elder warns that the boy can't hide the enormous ambition reflected in his own eyes. Staring at his great-grandson up close, the leader states that the young man intends to turn his blade against Elmheim at some point. Tense from the accurate read, our hero becomes defensive as the old man asks if it's Roderick's head he desires so much. But Zenith just laughs at the boy's reaction, promising he has no intention of investigating his true motives now. Intrigued by that passive attitude, Aster asks why the leader doesn't consider the rebels as direct enemies. With great calmness, the elder recalls that the family's massive military force does not have a completely unified mind. He explains that Roderick has become too stubborn, and he's perfectly fine with the boy's existence serving as a good check to slow the Duke down. Tapping his cane on the floor, the old man warns that if the young man dares to bare his fangs at him again, the consequences will be fatal. Leaving the room down the corridor, the young man grumbles about that Elmheim monster as Hyfrid approaches, asking about the conversation. The Viscount is stunned to hear that his son refused an official invitation to join the main family. Just then, Count Maze approaches, commenting that this decision was a real shame. The eccentric lord points out that the young man would have a much sweeter life at the headquarters, and he's immediately recognized by our hero. Getting straight to the point, Astor questions why the nobleman offered that unusual help during the deadly trial. Feigning innocence, Maze replies that he just felt like provoking a sassy brat. Putting his arm around the boy, the Count changes the subject to emphasize that he is now officially a child of the Seven Wings. Discreetly pointing upwards, the Lord tells the young man to take a good look around the hall. Several big shots watch our hero from the balconies, torn between wanting to use him as a political tool or eliminating him before he becomes a lethal threat. Resuming his speech, Maze reminds him that the sacred crest carries tremendous prestige on its own throughout the entire kingdom. Because of this, he warns that the number of people trying to get close to or attack the young man will only increase from now on. Without letting his guard down, the MC glares at the nobleman, wanting to know if he's one of those opportunists too. Maintaining a calm posture, the Count chooses not to answer the provocation directly. Instead, he reveals he is one of the directors of the Knight Academy and explains that recruiting promising young talent early is part of his job. Pointing to the end of the corridor, Maze comments that old Zenith acts in the exact same sneaky way. Bidding a friendly farewell, the blue-haired lord states he is looking forward to seeing the rookie enroll in the military institution. Watching the man walk away, Astor admits he's very hard to read and wonders if he can already consider him a reliable ally. Cutting off his train of thought, Hyfryd touches his son's shoulder, calling him to return home safely. The Viscount proudly says he needs to tell his daughters about that incredible performance, while the boy imagines his mother will faint upon seeing his injuries. Far away, a kneeling knight reports to Duke Roderick that the young Lord Darius lost his life during Zenith's last test. Listening in silence, the blonde-haired nobleman questions what happened to Viscount Hyfryd's adopted son. The soldier hesitates slightly and comments that the leader seemed not to care one bit about his own blood perishing in the dungeon. Clasping his hands calmly, Roderick concludes that the legendary Seven Wings have indeed awakened in that insignificant boy. The guard commander looks up, astonished to realize the Duke already suspected this dangerous secret. Concerned about the situation, the knight warns that this absolute power could destroy the balance of power maintained by Elmheim. He suggests immediate action against the boy before the opposition can use him in the imminent civil war. However, Roderick just closes his eyes and tells his subordinates to leave the kid alone for now. With great arrogance, the Lord claims that if the main family were to crumble over such a small obstacle, it would have fallen long ago. Standing up from his chair, he assures them there is no need to rush this hunt. The Duke declares with absolute certainty that the boy and the magical miracle will eventually fall into his hands at the right moment. Until then, the plan is to let the young man run free to see how much he can struggle against his predetermined fate. Recalling the day he tore off Hyfryd's arm in the snow, Roderick promises to enjoy this little show without interfering. Displaying a predatory gaze in the darkness, the villain whispers our hero's name with pure obsession. 4 years later, the scene shifts to the bustling reception desk of the Dorsal Knight Academy entrance exam. In the training courtyard, some candidates whisper as they watch a sturdy young man approach. They doubt it's the famous Prodigy, as rumors always said the magical here was much more intimidating. At the registration table, the staff member warns that the institution takes no responsibility for fatal accidents during the exam. The inspector asks the next candidate to sign the paper and display their magic crest to prove their ability, but the examiner freezes and is left speechless upon reading the prestigious surname Elmheim on the registration document. Sweating, he looks up, stunned by the presence of this living legend right in front of him. A bit awkwardly, Astor scratches his head, explaining that his mark is in a very difficult place to show in front of everyone. Displaying great confidence, the dark-haired young man asks if his face alone isn't enough of an entry pass. The grand stone structure of the academy rises on the horizon, welcoming the thousands of young warriors of the nation. As the MC walks through the streets of the testing area, a shrill voice demands his immediate attention. The muscular young man from before blocks his path, calling the newcomer an annoying show-off. Displaying the sword on his back, the troublemaker introduces himself as Vigar Smates and mocks the rookie's unknown origins. Pointing to the giant emblem on the gates, the bully emphasizes that this place is exclusively for the true elite of the kingdom. Not giving a darn about the drama, Astor agrees there's no problem and tries to leave, frustrating the brute. Smates violently grabs the boy's shoulder, lecturing about how everyone present trained hard to achieve this golden dream. Judging the short weapon on the young man's hip, Smates claims the academy is no place for a novice swordsman to play warrior. With an air of pure superiority, the bully tells the rookie to turn around and go home if he just wants to stroll around the capital. Around them, the other candidates sigh, tired of seeing the veteran intimidating the freshman yet again. However, one of the boys recognizes our hero's identity and warns that Smates is messing with the worst possible person in the courtyard. Hearing the title of the Seven Wings, the big guy swallows hard, realizing the huge mistake he just made. Before the fight can really start, a mocking voice echoes through the crowd, greeting the MC without any invitation. Astor recognizes the cynical tone immediately and turns his head, annoyed, to face his inconvenient relative. Placing a hand on his chest with false elegance, Gryan introduces himself and welcomes the forgotten member of the family. The red-haired noble makes a point of insulting his cousin's abandoned origins right in front of all the competitors. Completely changing his posture, Gryan pretends to be deeply shaken by Darius's recent passing during the trials. But then he bursts out laughing, assuring them that an incompetent disgrace like that deserved to lose his life. The redhead reports that his own brother was a huge pain for trying to act arrogant all the time. Resting his hand on his sword, the noble confesses he couldn't care less about the ridiculous rumors of the magical miracle. Leaning close to Astor's ear, he warns his younger cousin to be careful, as there are no adult lords here to protect him. As the Elmim veterans turn their backs, the extras lament their own luck at having to face these freaks in the practical exam. Amidst all this tension, the other candidates whisper about the heavy rivalry between the families. They prefer to back off to avoid getting caught in the middle of that mess. At this, Smates breaks into a cold sweat. Sensing the danger, someone in the crowd asks if the rookie is a certain person of great renown. The question hangs in the air, questioning if the young man in black clothes is the famous member of the Elmheim family. With a malicious look in his eyes, Gryan just observes the terrified reaction of the other competitors at the revelation. Ignoring the hostility, the MC calmly raises his hand and asks to be called just Astor, without formalities. Soon the powerful voice of an inspector echoes from the top of a giant tower, welcoming everyone to the site of the first test. The gray-haired man speaks firmly, reminding them that their main duty there is to serve and protect the king at all costs. He states they are glorious swords risking their lives for the crown, making it clear there is no room for weak or foolish warriors. As the candidates walk towards the massive wall, the examiner tells them to consider today's test a true battlefield. During the walk, Astor finds the whole speech quite ridiculous. Even so, he admits to himself that he has finally managed to return to this place. Nostalgia for the past hits hard, remembering that this path to becoming a royal knight was completely denied to him when he was still a wingless good for nothing. The image of the relentless leader comes to his mind. Our hero knows that beyond these walls lies a world of the strong, dominated by Commander Roderick. Without lowering his head, the young man swears to reach the top very soon and tells the Duke to just wait patiently for his arrival. With a clear goal in mind, he decrees that the first step to this revenge is to survive and pass this selection test. Suddenly cutting off his thoughts, the inspector announces the immediate start of the exam as iron spears shoot from the walls. Without any warning, one of the blades brutally pierces a candidate's head, shocking Astor with the lethality of the first test. The young man's body drops stiffly to the stone floor as the first trial is officially revealed as the tower test. A true storm of lethal arrows rains down on the youths, and the only rule is to stay standing until the end. Panic instantly grips the courtyard. The candidates run desperately from side to side, not knowing how to handle the attack. Screams echo off the walls as several boys warn they'll be slaughtered if they keep standing in the middle of that deadly arena. In a desperate attempt to survive, some clever warriors form small groups to defend their backs and block the weapons together. From up high, the examiner notices that the veterans accustomed to the test know exactly how to react to the lightning-fast ambush. Even with these group defense strategies, the man coldly admits that the exam survival rate is only around 30%. He explains that these superficial defenses won't last long against the relentless pressure of the continuous volleys. With a quick and light movement, Gryan deflects a heavy spear, proving that the Academy is looking for something far beyond simple teamwork. The real goal is to find warriors with a raw ability to solve problems, something exclusive to those who possess the power of the wings. Hiding under their sword shields, the other candidates notice Astor standing still in the danger zone and think he's frozen in fear. Safe from the chaos, the arrogant redhead chuckles, hoping his younger cousin turns into a pincushion riddled with arrows right there. Completely focused on what matters, the MC ignores the cowardly insults and just firmly grips the hilt of his weapon. In an explosive move, he draws the blade, unleashing a hurricane of red aura that instantly sweeps away the attacks around him. Caught off guard by the unexpected raw force, the inspector's eyes widen in shock at what he just witnessed in the courtyard. The boy deflects absolutely every projectile, creating a dome of pure energy, and challenges the exam to send everything it has at him. The spears rain down relentlessly but are violently deflected as soon as they touch the insane flow of scarlet magic, shielding their faces from the wind. The competitors are terrified and wonder what kind of monster formed that barrier. Grayan breaks into a cold sweat with a look of pure rage, indignant that no lethal attack can get near his cousin's body. Because of this, the gray-haired man realizes the young man is rotating the expelled mana to create an impenetrable current and praises his control. The magical barrier rises so densely and aggressively that our hero seems completely isolated in the middle of his own storm. Soon after, the volleys finally cease. The boys look up confused, trying to figure out if the carnage is over for good. From above, the examiner admits that more people passed than he expected, but concludes that it doesn't change much in the end. Using his powerful voice, he congratulates everyone on their good work and tells the victors to pay attention to the fallen bodies on the stone floor. Amidst the dozens of scattered weapons, the inspector officially decrees that the warriors still standing have passed the first test. Without giving the youths a second to rest, he orders everyone to follow him immediately to the location of the second stage of admission. While sheathing their swords, one of the young men lets out a heavy sigh of relief and complains about how strict that examiner can be. Side by side, his panting colleague jokes, asking if Astor is already tired after surviving that entire iron rain. The young man takes a better look at the MC's physical state and is completely impressed that he shows no signs of exhaustion. Up ahead, the gray-haired man glances at the boy out of the corner of his eye, astonished by the lack of fatigue after such a heavy use of magic. For his part, the examiner assures himself he is very eager to see the 7 winged warriors' progress in the next phase. As the group advances through the bright corridors, Grayan steps away to talk secretly with one of his cowardly subordinates. A dark memory comes to mind, recalling the express order from the main house to prevent the rookie from becoming a knight at all costs. Under immense pressure, the redhead knows very well he needs to eliminate his younger cousin to ensure the prosperous future of his own ducal lineage. In front of the new courtyard, the inspector distributes identical blades, ordering an immediate weapon swap to ensure fairness in the test. Handing over the demonic relic, Astor grumbles about how annoying this is and asks if the test rules have always been this strict. The rookie beside him calmly explains that for mid-level warriors like them, swapping standard blades makes no difference at all. However, his partner notices the strange hilt of our hero's weapon being taken away and suggests that the management might be afraid of that equipment. Silently agreeing with the theory, the MC realizes that hiding his relic's strength here wouldn't be a bad idea. In the bustling woods, Astor mockingly notes that his redhead cousin already has his pathetic cronies acting like dogs under his complete control. Annoyed by the direct provocation, one of the young men pokes our hero's back, denying he's a doormat, but Astor recognizes him instantly as a minor hare. In a very serious, threatening tone, our hero warns the third-rate noble to be very careful not to end up barking at the wrong person. Intimidated by his rival's murderous posture, the young man swallows hard and backs away desperately, begging Grayan not to make him fight that monster. Amused by the utterly pathetic scene, our hero quickly notices the heavy, hostile atmosphere forming between the teams in the courtyard. Through the dirty looks and malicious whispers, he concludes that the whole arrogant atmosphere of the local high nobility is quite unpleasant. Grabbing everyone's attention again, the experienced knight raises his voice and announces that the second stage is a major siege battle. The rules state that the survivors will be divided into 3 distinct teams, fighting directly for control of positions in the woods. A base is captured by raising an allied flag. Victory goes to the alliance that controls 2 or more areas before the bell rings. Besides the prohibition on damaging the colored banners, the inspector assures them that anything goes and authorizes lethal attacks with the distributed blades. With the small flags in his hands, the man begins the official drawing that will determine the final formation of the afternoon's combat squads. Immediately, the crowd of boys begins to disperse across the terrain, organizing into groups according to their drawn colors. Supported by his allies under the light blue flag, Aster takes a close look at the teammates who will risk their lives alongside him in this trial. A spark of magic intensely illuminates the orange sky, signaling without delay the start of the battle for survival in the dangerous jungle. Adjusting his cloth gloves, the young man mentally reviews the mission to capture at least 2 of the 3 vital points to avoid failure. Nearby in the woods, 2 cronies from the yellow team nervously conclude that only one squad will emerge unscathed from this territorial war. The soldier trembles just thinking that at some point, they will inevitably have to clash with the power of that Elmheim prodigy. Thanks to his sharp warrior's hearing, the MC turns his head slightly, confused, listening to all the boys' drama before the fight. Not understanding the panic, his arrogant partner smirks sadistically and whispers that their problem is far from the rookie's raw strength. The real shadowy threat that terrifies the pawns is the deadly retaliation from the main house if they oppose the political interests of Cousin Gryan. Displaying total arrogance, Gryan warns that clashing with the main house means never holding your head high as a royal knight again. In the worst-case scenario, the rebels' entire lineage ends up being mercilessly slaughtered by the family's guards. Resigned to the situation, Smates asks if our hero is going to drop out of the exam as the boy removes the blue band from his arm. The brute laments the situation, stating that the rookie would probably never understand how the weak truly feel. Running alone through the woods, the MC grumbles about ending up completely isolated in the middle of a team battle. This is no surprise to him, as the knights know that his cousin's family is a symbol of untouchable terror. The coward's words about the feeling of weakness echo in the young man's mind again. Remaining calm, he perfectly understands that to those pawns, he is just another useless piece on the board. Advancing through the open terrain, Aster notices the environment is bizarrely silent, with no confrontations happening. He suddenly stops, suspicious of all the peace, questioning if the teams are just being very cautious. But then it dawns on him, realizing this strange calm proves that everything is going exactly according to the enemy's plan. Arriving at the main base of the territory, our hero finds a blonde nobleman already waiting for him beside the raised flag. With his guard up, Aster connects the dots and deduces that this guy is part of the red-haired here's scheme. Showing impatience, the stranger complains about the delay, stating he was starting to get bored. The blonde throws the yellow banner away and calls the rookie to a fight, wanting to test his strength. Shocked by his rival's action, the MC watches the fabric fall to the grass. He is completely baffled to see the blonde holding a red flag instead of the original one. Just then, heavy footsteps echo from behind the boy, revealing the arrival of several other armed competitors. Leading the group, Gryan scoffs, warning that he's going to teach his younger cousin how the ducal house truly fights. The main rule of the siege stage comes back to the young man's mind amidst the dangerous ambush. To secure absolute victory, a team needed to control at least 2 bases by the time limit. Drawing his sword, Aster focuses on the fact that planting one's own color in enemy territory is the final condition. Without hesitation, our hero questions the blonde, reminding him that he was drawn for the yellow team. In response, the light-haired nobleman firmly plants the red staff in the ground. The arrogant young man explains that the answer is quite simple, revealing he formed a direct alliance with the red-haired here. Watching from afar, Gryan praises his ally, introducing him as the eldest son of the prestigious Nolan family. Observing from the top of the tower, the gray-haired inspector analyzes the situation, recalling the impeccable performance of both boys. In the first deadly trial, Aster and Nolan were the only ones who survived the rain of arrows without showing any effort. The examiner is amazed by the scene, considering these 2 prodigies as true raw gems of the knighthood. Surrounded on all sides in the courtyard, the MC just ironically criticizes this supposed alliance between rival teams. Holding his weapon firmly, the boy reminds them that in the end, only one squad will emerge victorious. The blonde fully agrees and confesses he has already decided to hand the victory over to the main house on a silver platter. Aster's realization hits him instantly, understanding that Gryan's cronies must be attacking his base right now. With his eyes filled with fury, he glares at his adversary, asking if his cousin threatened him to force this cooperation. Nolan shrugs, stating that no one would be foolish enough to stand in the way of a runaway carriage. Without wasting time, the nobleman charges forward, cutting through the wind with his sword drawn. Delivering a heavy blow from above, he decrees that bowing to the stronger is the natural behavior of the nobility. The MC blocks the violent attack but immediately realizes there's something very wrong with his standard issue blade. Feeling the metal give way, he suspects the examiner deliberately handed him a defective weapon. Pressing the offensive, the blonde assures him the fight will be a fair duel, and that the soldiers won't interfere. He reveals he was never a fan of the Elmheim family, but he hates show-offs even more. The frantic clash continues with the blades repeatedly colliding, sending sparks flying. The crushing pressure from the enemy causes our hero's sword to start cracking dangerously in the middle of his defense. Seizing the critical moment, Nolan lands a clean blow that shatters the rookie's weapon into several pieces. But the nobleman's confidence vanishes instantly as he notices an unexpected movement in front of him. Seeing his rival turn his back, the blonde shouts indignantly, asking if the coward is trying to run from the fight. Running at full speed, our hero says he'll deal with him later, as he needs to settle some urgent scores now. The heir of House Nolan is left completely confused, thinking he actually struck terror into the Prodigy's heart. But as he looks at the ground, a piece of metal thrown on the gravel catches his attention. Picking up the fragment of the shattered blade, he finds that the steel has no quality and breaks very easily. Sighing in disappointment, the nobleman understands that the sabotaged weapon was Gryan's cowardly dirty work. Arriving desperately at the gates of his own base, Aster shouts for his brutish companion, wanting to know if they're alive. However, he finds his red-haired cousin waiting for him, who flaunts his superiority, saying the rookie arrived too early. Sitting comfortably, the sadist laments that his blonde ally couldn't hold the family's trash for very long. Gryan points to the red flag already raised there, announcing they have just completely dominated the third territory. Consumed by a cold rage, our hero glares at his relative and says his name in a very threatening tone. Walking slowly through the courtyard, he demands to know what that bunch of cowards did to his teammates. The redhead's cynical expression vanishes, replaced by a very tense look in the face of his younger cousin's fury. Without his main weapon, Aster quickly draws the backup dagger he carried strapped to his back. Completely focused on the kill, the MC remembers he warned from the start that he wouldn't play anyone's dirty games. Tied up on the ground, Smates turns his face and grumbles that only a complete idiot would dare challenge Elmheim's authority. With a hysterical laugh, his cousin celebrates the fact that the blue team didn't even try to offer resistance. He taunts that the pawns know how to choose the right side, but Aster retorts, asking if numbers alone win the fight. Making a hand signal, Gryan assures the rookie he is mistaken and that the main victory is already a done deal. The sight of the 3 red flags waving confirms that his team's territorial dominance is absolute at the moment. The redhead explains that even if the boy runs around desperately planting banners, there will be no one to defend them. The abandoned blue band on the arena floor proves that our hero is completely alone in this siege war. With great coldness, the sadist details that the guards just need to wait for the boy to leave the base to raise the red cloth again. Flaunting his arrogance, he decrees that they just need to keep the 2 points secure until the signal sounds to guarantee everyone's approval. Gripping his dagger, our hero takes a step forward, promising he'll make sure they can't even do that. The young man's eyes shine with pure murderous intent as he swears to take down every single enemy present. Feeling the crushing pressure of that demonic aura, the allied soldiers retreat, completely terrified. But the redhead refuses to back down, stating with conviction that his younger cousin is just bluffing. Pointing to the courtyard, he reminds him that without a decent blade, all that power of the 7 wings is absolutely useless. Surrounded by an army of armed cronies, the MC hears his cousin ask if he really wants to try fighting them all. Staring at what's left of his broken sword, Aster admits the current situation is a real problem. Dropping the useless piece of steel, the MC confesses he was quite impressed by his cousin's actions. Tied up and on the ground, Smates watches the scene, completely shocked by the boy's calmness. Drawing his backup dagger, our hero praises the enemy's plan, saying it was thought out much better than he expected. With a sadistic smile and eyes gleaming with madness, Gryan is absolutely certain he has already won the dispute. The silence is broken only by the sound of the rest of the blade falling onto the dry courtyard dirt. However, his younger cousin's sharp gaze shows he isn't the least bit worried about this disadvantage. Pointing the short weapon directly at his adversary, the rookie repeats that the show his relative put on really surprised him. Blinded by his own arrogance, the rival group's leader keeps repeating mentally that victory is already in his hands. As the useless metal finally hits the ground, the peaceful atmosphere completely vanishes. In the blink of an eye, the MC charges forward, tearing through the air at an absurd speed that startles the surrounding cronies. Without giving a chance for defense, he lands a heavy blow directly to one of the soldiers' stomachs, who immediately spits up blood. Seizing the opening, the boy spins quickly across the field and takes down another crony with extreme ease. Focused on the kill, Aster grips the hilt of the small blade as his magical energy begins to overflow. A violent blast of red aura explodes in the air, sending another enemy flying from the brutal impact. Watching his men being slaughtered, Gryan's eyes widen, not understanding a single thing that just happened. Already on top of the base's wall, our hero states that his cousin's biggest mistake was showing up right in front of him. Exuding a crushing pressure, the rookie warns that this overconfidence will cost the enemy their victory. Seized with terror, the rival leader backs away, cursing the boy and calling him a true monster. Without wasting time on insults, the MC leaps from the wall, enveloped in a storm of lethal red magic. Slicing through the sky like a scarlet comet, he plummets straight towards his desperate relative. Trying to draw his own sword, the sadist is shocked to see that his younger cousin managed to cover that entire distance through the air. Staring down his prey, Aster coldly warns that his relative was too slow to draw his weapon. With a relentless move, the rookie lands a devastating kick directly to his adversary's stomach. In that frantic moment, an unusual memory of when he first flew as a baby crosses the MC's mind. Seeing his enemy thrown far away, the boy reflects that because he was born without wings in the past, he can feel this power much better. He lands softly, confessing that having magic is great, remembering how that wall once seemed unreachable. Lying on the dirt and trembling with fear, the defeated noble desperately begs the monster to stop the attack. Ignoring the pathetic plea, our hero raises his glowing dagger, ready to finish the fight once and for all. With a confident smile, the MC completes his thought, saying that any obstacle now seems too small. The impact of the final blow generates a massive explosion of energy that kicks up a lot of dust and destroys the arena floor. Slowly, the thick smoke begins to clear, revealing the outcome of the confrontation for control of the territory. Outside, the other candidates watch the destruction, terrified, trying to understand what the heck just happened. Still tied up nearby, Smates breaks into a cold sweat, completely paralyzed by the absurd level of that battle. In the middle of the dust cloud, our hero's imposing silhouette appears, standing and staring at his cousin's fallen body. Breathing calmly, the young man in black clothes maintains a cold expression without showing a hint of remorse. In a swift move, he firmly grabs the collar of his defeated adversary's shirt. Lifting the humiliated sadist from the ground as if he were trash, the boy makes him groan in pain from the violent pull. Staring at the band of terrified cronies, the MC angrily questions why they are still standing there doing nothing. Bleeding and dizzy, Gryan tries to give a pathetic order, telling his soldiers to take out the rookie immediately. Desperate for help, he screams with all his might that this is an official demand from the main lineage. Hearing the political threat, the brute clicks his tongue in frustration and tries to free himself from his bonds. Our hero glares at the cowardly soldiers, asking if they are that afraid of the ducal house's revenge. Now free and holding his weapon, Smates admits he's terrified because his family is very weak and any mistake would be the end. The veteran vents that the weak are always crushed like ants, forced to live submissively to survive in this world. With his eyes welling up with revolt, the warrior shouts that someone so powerful would never understand the suffering of those who have nothing. Surprised by the sincerity of that outburst, the boy falls completely silent, absorbing the words he just heard. A melancholic expression takes over the MC's face as he lowers his head with a slight smirk. Not understanding the rookie's calm reaction amidst the tension, Smates stammers, asking what's so funny. Just then, our hero nostalgically remembers that his older sister used to repeat that exact same phrase to him in the past. Returning to reality, he admits he could argue about it, but agrees that right now, he is indeed very blessed with magic. Pressing the cold steel against the enemy's neck, his younger cousin warns that it's precisely because he has this power that there are things only he can resolve. Declaring war aloud, the young man guarantees he will destroy the arrogance of the main house, since the extras are too weak to try. Filled with a brutal fury and exuding a pure murderous aura, our hero promises to crush the entire ducal lineage with his own hands. The opposing soldiers and the veteran's eyes widen, completely perplexed by the suicidal audacity of that statement. Immobilized on the gravel, his cousin swallows hard, breaking into a cold sweat at the rookie's insane threat. Shocked by the situation, Smates questions if the boy has any idea that he'd just betrayed his entire blood family. Staring at those present with absolute seriousness, Aster doesn't back down an inch and confirms that this is an official declaration of war. The memory of the dark basement surfaces as he warns that blind devotion to this family only rewards the weak with betrayal and their final moments. Without changing his tone, the MC tells the pawns to fight for real if they don't want to have such a pathetic end in the future. Assuming his firm combat stance, Astor decrees that the magical miracle was born with him only to fulfill this lethal objective. Pointing to the two paths, he forces the enemies to choose right then and there which side of this internal war they intend to be on. The fallen noble struggles on the ground, demanding loyalty and threatening to hunt down all the cronies who dare to betray the main house. Screaming, the coward warns he will destroy the lives of anyone who abandons him in the middle of this academy selection test. Pressured by the critical situation, Smates tells the redhead that everyone knows very well the cruel end that awaits them if they obey blindly. With his face contorted by the fury of being used as a doormat, the veteran finally takes a courageous stand. In a pure adrenaline rush, he lets out a powerful scream to finally shake off all the fear that held him back. The brute angrily throws his sword onto the stone floor of the base, accepting the consequences of his actions. Running straight to the MC's side, the soldier demands a guarantee that the arrogant leader's downfall will really happen. Grabbing the boy's shirt, the warrior swears he will never forgive him if he gives false hope of freedom to the weaker ones. The rookie cracks a sincere smile amidst the confusion and simply promises he will keep his word, no matter the cost. Hearing the young hero's firm response, the veteran relaxes his shoulders, feeling an immense relief wash over his mind. Grabbing the blue band lying on the grass, the young man tears off his old identification and proudly declares his full name for all to hear. Tying the fabric to his left arm, he seals his fate, stating aloud that from now on, he fights for the hero's branch family. The other pawns are shocked by their allies' absurd courage, realizing in that same moment that the redhead's entire political trap has just crumbled. Cornered and bleeding, Gryan glares daggers at our hero, calling him a hateful country bumpkin. In the courtyard, Smates questions the other candidates, asking why they're still standing there doing nothing. The veteran encourages the group to show what they're made of, and tells them all to bet their lives on the Seven Wings. Energized by the courageous speech, the other pawns finally take a stand and decide to join the rebellion. Watching the scene, Astor thinks with relief that at least he won't have to run around raising the flags alone. Even so, the MC reflects that just this group still isn't enough to bring down the ducal house. Nearby, the defeated heir remains on the ground, feeling the weight of crushing humiliation. Approaching calmly, the silver-haired nobleman extends his hand and asks if Gryan is okay. Consumed by fury, the sadist slaps his ally's hand away and tells the useless trash not to touch him. Screaming, the redhead swears he will destroy all the scum from the branch family, no matter the cost. In his thoughts, he fears he won't be able to face the main family again if he keeps letting his younger cousin do whatever he wants. The coward remembers his brother Darius, assuring himself he won't meet the same pathetic end. Clenching his bloodied hand, the heir refuses to accept his journey ending in such a humiliating way. Suddenly, a heavy boot stops right in front of him as a mocking voice asks what's wrong. Staring down at the redhead, his former ally comments that he looks pathetic. Recognizing the voice immediately, Gryan looks up and shouts Nolan's name with hope. Pointing furiously at the MC, the redhead demands to know what his ally was doing, since taking care of the younger cousin was his mission. With a malicious smile, the sadist internally celebrates having such a strong warrior still on his side. Analyzing the situation, the silver-haired nobleman admits that Astor's sword skills surpass anyone there, even without the wing mark. Desperate for revenge, the heir screams for his partner to cut the enemy to pieces right away. In response, Nolan simply throws the team's red flag right in the coward's face. Maintaining a calm posture, the young knight says he only came back to return that useless object. With a cold gaze, he states that the ducal house's dirty methods go completely against his pride. Turning his back without remorse, the lord officially declares that their alliance is broken, leaving Gryan stunned. The other cronies panic upon seeing the betrayal, completely lost and not knowing which side to take now. With firm steps, Nolan warns that they're back to square one and questions if the rookie thought he'd get through without a fight. The boy of the Seven Wings just watches his old rival approach without showing any concern. Drawing his own blade firmly, the nobleman emphasizes the immense pride he has in his family's techniques. Pointing his weapon directly at the MC, he proposes a direct clash against the legendary magical miracle. A bright yellow aura envelopes Nolan's body as he prepares for the long-awaited duel in the middle of the arena, advancing with his glowing sword. The nobleman demands they decide once and for all who the superior warrior is. Enveloped in red magic, Astor raises his dagger and warns that this decision will have to wait a bit. The blades collide violently, creating a huge boom and scattering sparks all over the arena. Caught off guard by the raw force of the defense, Nolan's eyes widen, impressed by the impact. The knight is shocked to realize the MC's strength has completely changed from what it was before. Very confused, the nobleman questions if his adversary has already forgotten the strict rules of this test. Quickly moving away, he reminds him that only one team will pass, and that they both want to become knights. Getting into an attack stance again, the silver-haired man states that the only option is to settle everything with raw force right there. With a serene smile, the younger cousin closes his eyes and comments that this outcome would be a big problem for him. Walking towards his rival, our hero confesses that he also wants to see Nolan become a royal knight. The unexpected declaration leaves the warrior completely perplexed, not understanding what the boy means. Explaining the situation, Astor admits that after encouraging all that rebellion, it would be very cruel to destroy his allies' dreams now. Exuding a confident aura, the MC reveals he has a perfect plan to guarantee everyone's approval. The audacity of that proposal leaves both Nolan and Gryan completely shocked in the middle of the courtyard. Smates breaks into a cold sweat, arguing that it's humanly impossible to get all teams to pass an elimination test. Sheathing his dagger, the boy warns he can't make any guarantees, but points out the idea will work if everyone cooperates. Then, he calmly walks over to his cousin, who is still kneeling on the arena floor. Completely battered, the redhead looks up, showing genuine terror in the face of the family's monster. Extending his hand in a friendly manner, Astor ironically proposes they make peace right there. Time passes, and the gray-haired inspector stares in shock at a flagpole flying, all three flags tied together. Furious at the bizarre scene, the man shouts, asking if these boys don't even know how to raise a banner properly. Maintaining his calm, the MC argues that the rule only required control of 2 or more camps for victory. Since the regulations never prohibited a joint hoisting, the 3 teams formed a grand alliance to control the bases together. Getting in the rookie's face, the examiner indignantly asks if he wants everyone to pass, accusing him of turning the exam into a joke. Trembling with fear in the back, Gryan grumbles that he knew this twisted logic would never be accepted by the academy. Screaming, the official questions if the young men would simply shake hands with their enemies if ordered to destroy them in a war. Unfazed by the shouting, the younger cousin dryly replies that he would do just that if the enemy were more useful alive than not. The inspector loses his patience, stating that a knight is merely the kingdom's sword and doesn't have the right to make that kind of decision. Clashing head-on, our hero asks if they will be disqualified even without breaking any rules, accusing the man of acting out of pure ego. Cornered by the boy's brilliant argument, the experienced knight grinds his teeth in frustration, not knowing how to respond. Leaning in even closer, Astor whispers in a threatening tone, reminding him of the political weight the situation involves. With a dark look, he implies that the ducal family would never stay quiet if the exam failed their heir because of a loophole in the rules. Completely defeated by the kid's perfect blackmail, the examiner lowers his head, letting out a groan of pure frustration. With no way out, the official decides to consult his superiors about the impasse, leaving the youths waiting for the decision for a full hour in the waiting room. A tense atmosphere fills the room as one of the young men swings his boots, asking if they'll really be okay. Sitting on a bench, Smates confesses his fear that they'll all end up failing in the end. Leaning on the table, our hero tries to calm his allies, stating that at least they managed to force the management to discuss the issue. Right behind him, his redhead cousin crosses his arms, turns his face away, and lets out a grunt of pure contempt. Curious, the brute admits his surprise that Gryan agreed to cooperate and asks what his younger cousin said to convince him. Displaying a terrifying smile, the MC sadistically assures him he didn't say much to the coward. Suddenly, the great hall doors burst open with a bang as a guard demands everyone's attention. Immediately, the candidates look up, eager to discover the Academy's final verdict. A high-ranking official enters the room imposingly, announcing the arrival of Director Mimir to reveal the results. Without wasting time, the young warriors rush to form a perfect line as a sign of absolute respect to the authorities. The director maintains a rigid and authoritative posture, telling everyone to pay close attention to the words that will define their futures. Smates notices the man who just entered and asks, impressed, if that guy is really the director of the institution. The veteran comments that the official looks just like a regular old man. Soon, the MC tells him to have a little more respect. Stopping right in front of our hero, Director Mimir recognizes him immediately and confirms the boy's name. The man explains that approving such an absurd number of candidates at once is completely unprecedented there. He reveals that they even suggested redoing the exam, but the other directors supported the rookie's idea and accepted the claim. Confused by the sudden response, Aster questions what exactly this decision means for them. Mimir maintains a calm and friendly posture in the face of the young man's genuine doubt. Clearly and directly, the official announces that absolutely everyone present has passed. The news explodes like a bombshell in the hall, leaving the candidates overjoyed with the surprise approval. The director demands the new students work hard, proving the academy didn't make a mistake with this bizarre exception. Smates bursts into tears of joy while our hero breathes a sigh of relief that his crazy plan worked. Turning his back, the man congratulates the group on their enrollment and officially welcomes them to the Night Academy. Later that night, the tense atmosphere gives way to a well-deserved rest in the school's luxurious hot springs. Soaking in the hot water, the veteran celebrates excitedly, praising the delicious food and the huge size of the baths. One of his allies agrees enthusiastically, remembering they are only enjoying all this thanks to the MC. Our hero scratches his head, a bit embarrassed by all the sudden attention from his new companions. The soldiers remain impressed that he saved everyone's skin, vowing to follow him as their new boss forever. Nolan grumbles, calling the group opportunists, pointing out they were Gryan's cronies just a short while ago, and says he won't be giving thanks. Soon, one of the young men provokes Nolan, reminding him he lost the fight. However, the noble retorts that he merely accepted a draw. Amused by the useless argument, Aster assures them the details don't matter, since they challenged the main house and are now students. With a determined look, the boy states that these small victories will turn into a gigantic wave to crush the ducal family. He officially declares that it is at this exact moment and place that their great rebellion truly begins. Just then, the young man remembers his sisters and focuses on Alphen, deducing that as a senior, she will surely be a strong ally here. Focused on the big goal, our hero decrees that their arduous training at the Night Academy begins the next day. Getting out of the water, he reflects that the first real mission will be to get used to the heavy routine of this place. However, the young man suddenly stops upon noticing a very strange movement behind him. A huge group of recruits gathers bizarrely, trying to focus their vision on the boy's magic mark. Completely caught off guard, Aster jumps back, demanding to know what the heck they are trying to do. His allies excitedly explain that the living seven wings are a good luck charm, hoping to gain some divine blessing if they pray to it. Annoyed and amused by this madness, the youngest shouts for them to stop, assuring them that kind of thing doesn't work. Nolan watches the whole commotion from a distance, maintaining a more reserved posture as the shouting takes over the bath. Looking at the moon through the window, the young noble sighs heavily, already dreading the headache that awaits him in the future. Far away at the main mansion, Helen stares at the courtyard and states she is utterly disappointed with Gryan's failure. The matriarch shows her fury as she comments that she heard about the rookie's oath of destruction against the ducal house. She questions how the young man had the courage to just stand by and watch after suffering such an unforgivable insult. Desperate on the floor, Gryan apologizes and promises to fix his grave mistake next time to meet her expectations. But before he can finish his pathetic excuse, a merciless kick lands squarely on his face with great violence. Lilian cuts off his apology with a scream, promising there won't be a next time for a useless piece of trash. The hard impact throws the coward far down the dark corridor as his aggressor calls him scum. The Lord advances furiously, stating he should be turned into monster feed, comparing him to the deceased loser Darius. Mercilessly stepping on her own brother's head, she listens to him beg for mercy in a completely miserable way. Overcome by pure disgust, Lilian unleashes a sequence of brutal kicks against her relative's fallen body. Gryan grunts in pain, silently enduring the beating as the blows drive his stomach into the stone floor. Bleeding heavily, the redhead curses Aster in his thoughts, blaming the rookie for all this humiliating punishment. The memory of the seven-winged boy comes to the loser's mind, recalling when he was forced to cooperate to not leave empty-handed. Our hero had warned about the real danger Gryan would face if the family leader found out about his defeat. With a cold gaze, Aster guaranteed the Duke would surely have him taken out if he learned of his unforgivable failure. The redhead froze in terror upon hearing that truth, feeling the weight of his own demise hanging right over his head. Reinforcing the blackmail, his younger cousin described the other cousin's final moments, calling his passing a terrible sight. Leaning in close, the MC whispered in a very threatening way that it was no dignified way to go. Dominating the situation, our hero told him to cooperate if he didn't want to meet the same pathetic end as in that dungeon. As a reward for his obedience, Aster offered a truce to ensure his relative's survival in the exam. Back in the dark present, Helen intervenes in the brutal beating, ordering Lilian to stop and spare the young man's life. Lying in a pool of his own blood, Gran sobs in pain as an arrogant voice mocks his depressing state. Julius appears in the room, cynically stating they need to forgive their cute little brother since they're family. Caressing Alphen's hair, the psychopathic lord agrees that family has to get along and asks for her opinion. The young woman just keeps her head down and her eyes wide, paralyzed by the terror of this sick situation. Julius recalls that the image of the house's absolute dominance has always been essential to keep the knights completely in line. Liliane listens attentively to the warning that this respect is crumbling with the sudden emergence of the Seven Wings. With very cruel intentions, the psychopath decrees that it's the two girls' mission to remind the world who really runs things. Liliane immediately agrees, angrily stating they will prove the main lineage isn't just for show. Displaying a macabre smile, Julius tells his sister to show their younger cousin the true and absolute meaning of the word violence. The next day, all the freshmen gather in formation in the academy's huge courtyard under the strong sunlight. One of the instructors takes the lead, congratulating the group on the chance to begin their path to the glorious Royal Knights. He emphasizes that this elite military force must crush any opponent, demanding absolute perfection in combat and strategy. Pounding the lectern, the veteran warns that all recruits aiming for this position must prove themselves incredibly special. To illustrate his point, the official's hand glows intensely as he concentrates a dense magical aura in front of everyone. A quick slash cuts through the air, manifesting a sword of pure green energy, impressing the students present. The instructor explains that the system divides students into 6 different levels, assigning missions based on personal skill. He warns that being powerful guarantees learning secret techniques, calling common swordsmen complete mediocrities. The energy blade slashes through the air once more, proving that raw dexterity is just the tip of the iceberg in war. Moving at an imperceptible speed, the official declares that those who can only manipulate magic are also second-rate. Nolan watches the display of strength with great interest, aware that this is the true level he needs to reach. Aster focuses on the instructor's words that only the perfect fusion of magic and steel makes a knight truly lethal. A colossal eruption of power devastates everyone's vision as the man shouts that proving one's own strength is the only freedom there. It all continues in the training courtyard with the instructor challenging the students to prove their worth. Without wasting time, Aster advances and delivers a powerful blow enveloped in an intense purple magical aura. With extreme ease, he cuts a whole magic iron pillar and cheerfully states that everything is fine. Amused, the official points to the damage and tells the other recruits to try and reach that level. The MC just sheathes his blade and walks away from the center of the arena with a completely calm posture. Watching from the balcony, 2 senior nobles are impressed by the rookie's absurd talent. One of them analyzes the cut pillar, confirming the boy is undeniably special for destroying such a rigid material. However, his blonde partner warns that the potential of the 7 wings goes far beyond that, and that the younger cousin will eventually be consumed. He warns that the real danger are the merciless monsters already hiding within the academy. The image of Julius brutally stepping on Gryan's head appears to illustrate this dark threat. In the castle corridors, our hero observes the landscape through the window while reflecting on the ranking system. Holding his card, Smates complains that even after passing the exam, the institution keeps testing everyone relentlessly. The veteran laments the situation, remembering that our hero and Nolan were the only ones not to start at rank 6. Staring at his own lower-level plate, the brute frustratedly admits he already expected to fall behind. To cheer up his ally, Aster shows his level 4 pass and reminds him that everyone will need to reach rank 2 in the future. Joking with the pressure, the brute calls the MC chief and says he's too strict. Caught off guard by the unusual title, the boy is completely confused, not understanding the joke. Smates approaches, concerned, and asks if the rookie has already forgotten the big promise he made. The memory of the declaration of war surfaces as the soldier remembers our hero swore to crush the ducal house. His partner reveals that many there took those words seriously, hoping he will change their reality. With great loyalty, the veteran asks the leader to trust them and let the group help carry this burden. Patting the boy's shoulder, he celebrates excitedly, inviting the young man to destroy the enemy family together. Inspired by the support, his younger cousin cracks a smile, agreeing he needs to get stronger to protect his allies. With a focused gaze, Aster accepts the weight of his own promise, aware that he will need a lot of strength to win. Cutting the serious mood, the young man decrees that the absolute priority at the moment is to fill their bellies. He explains they won't last the afternoon training hungry, but Smates finds the crowd blocking the corridor strange. Nearing the cafeteria, the other students desperately warn that the main family has just invaded the place. Sitting comfortably and eating a piece of bread, the psychopath Julius mockingly asks if this is the famous Astor. The MC's expression darkens in complete annoyance as the sadist says he got tired of waiting and decided to eat first. Displaying pure arrogance, the nobleman rests his feet on the table and cynically calls the boy his younger brother. Staring at the invaders, Astor immediately deduces the scoundrel's identity as the other students confirm the rumor. The cruel young man is Julius, the second in line for succession of the ducal lineage, accompanied by his dangerous sister Liliane. The two heirs are famous throughout the kingdom for being the most sadistic and relentless tyrants of the entire family. Breaking into a cold sweat at the revelation, the MC confesses he had completely forgotten about their presence at the academy. Stepping on a masked recruit's head, Liliane compliments her younger cousin's face and mocks the ugliness of the fallen boy. Agonizing on the cafeteria floor, the victim with his head trapped in metal groans in pain, unable to defend himself. Startled by the bizarre scene, the brute questions the meaning of that grotesque and plain helmet. Our hero immediately recognizes the dark object, revealing it to be the famous iron bridle. Terrified, his ally explains it's a torture device used by the big shots to punish severe failures. Pulling the victim by his clothes, Julius scoffs at all that knowledge coming from a member of a lower branch. Sitting on the subjugated boy, the psychopath criticizes the fact that his relative carries their name and fell to rank 6. Firmly holding the medal, the nobleman cynically laments how pathetic the defeated one's story has become. Smirking, the tyrant claims he gave the object as a gift to encourage his little brother to try harder. The sight of several other students wearing the same device illustrates the cruel method of basic reward for food. The sadist concludes that anyone will work to exhaustion when they realize they'll suffocate if they don't take off the mask. Noticing several other imprisoned recruits around the cafeteria, Smates panics at the collective torture. Maintaining his pose, Julius points out that everyone there has hungry eyes and tells the newcomers to greet the seniors. Then, the psychopath touches the shoulder of a gagged red-haired girl, asking her to show her face without shame. Slow footsteps echo through the hall as the cynical nobleman comments that it's been a long time since their last meeting. The young woman walks to the front of the crowd, leaving the MC completely stunned by what he just saw. His younger cousin's eyes widen in pure shock, refusing to believe the blatant cruelty before him. Opening his arms mockingly, the hare ironically asks if his older sister doesn't look like a different person. Completely submissive and wearing the iron bridle, Alphen silently awaits orders, confirming the worst suspicions. Consumed by immediate despair, the boy loses his composure and screams the young woman's name with all his might. Staring at the floor, the girl shows deep sadness behind the torturous helmet that traps her face. The sight of his injured relative awakens an uncontrollable fury in our hero, who grits his teeth, overflowing with hatred. In a lethal reflex, he draws his combat dagger at a frightening speed to immediately launch an attack. Charging like a wild animal, Astor curses the tyrant, calling him a scumbag and demanding to know what he did to the young woman. Suddenly, an iron mask clatters onto the stone floor, making a loud metallic noise near the commotion. Completely calm in the face of the murderous outburst, the sadistic lord just tells the freshman to cool his nerves. The torture device rolls across the floor, stopping right next to the injured relative's face. His younger cousin halts his lethal charge upon hearing the villain declare he made sure to prepare enough for everyone. Stepping on the coward, Julius displays a mountain of metal bridles and invites the freshman to a fun party.